Hello friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. The night shift has been the same for 19 years. Fluorescent lights hum overhead, sometimes whistling, sometimes just buzzing in that particular frequency you learn to recognize after walking the same corridors at the same hours for nearly 2 decades. When I enter Block C at 03 Hunquak, I hear the metallic echo of my own footsteps. The concrete floor is cold, the steel doors are thick, and everything is quiet. But that quiet is never complete. Someone snoring, someone muttering, someone groaning in their sleep. The inmates sleep, but the prison never does. I'm Elias Morvan. I've been a guard here for 19 years. When I started, I was 23, my hair was black. Now, I'm 42 and half my hair is white. Prison ages you, but I can't go anywhere else. There's a strange bond between this place and me. Maybe when you walk the same corridor for 19 years, you become part of that corridor. Or maybe the corridor becomes part of you. I don't know. I don't like to think. I just do my job. Block C is the oldest wing of the prison. Built in the 70s, the bricks are old. Paint has been applied over and over, but the old layers still seep through underneath. Some nights when I walk the corridor, I smell that old paint. A chemical, slightly sour smell. Block C has 36 cells. 34 have inmates. 2 are empty. C18 and C22. I understand C18. The man placed there last year died of a heart attack. He died waiting to be taken to the medical wing. We kept C18 empty because nobody volunteered to clean it. A bureaucratic matter. But C22 is different. C22 has never been used. At least not in the 19 years I've worked here. When I first arrived, I asked, "Why is C22 empty?" Night Sergeant Harlan Bristow looked at me, said nothing for a long time, then said, "That cell isn't used." Harlan was 55, had broad shoulders and such exhaustion in his eyes, it looked like he'd lived 1,000 years. "Why?" I asked. "It's just not used," he said. I didn't ask more questions after the way he looked at me. But over the years I've noticed things. Small things that add up. C22's door is heavier than the others. The lock mechanism is different, older, like it was installed at a different time. And the small window in the door, the one we use to check on inmates, it's covered from the inside. Not with the standard metal plate we use for isolation. This one looks welded, permanent, like it was never meant to be opened again. Tonight feels different. I can't explain it, but after 19 years you develop instincts. The air feels heavier in Block C. The usual sounds, the snoring and shifting, they seem muted, like someone turned down the volume on the world. I make my rounds, checking each cell, making notes on my clipboard. Cell by cell, bunk by bunk, everything normal until I reach C20. Reeve Talcott is awake. That's not unusual. Talcott is serving 15 years for manslaughter, and he's always had trouble sleeping. What's unusual is that he's standing at his cell door, hands wrapped around the bars, staring directly at C22. He doesn't acknowledge me when I approach. His eyes are fixed on that empty cell, like he's watching something I can't see. "Talcott," I say. Step back from the door. He doesn't move. Doesn't even blink. His knuckles are white from gripping the bars so hard. I can see the tendons standing out on the backs of his hands. "Talcott," I said, "step back." Finally, he turns to look at me, and there's something in his expression that makes me take a step backward. Not fear, exactly, more like recognition, like he's seeing something he's been expecting. "You hear it too, don't you?" he says. His voice is barely above a whisper. "Hear what?" "The talking. From C-22. I listen. The corridor is silent except for the usual ambient noise. Ventilation system humming. Someone coughing 3 cells down. The fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. "There's nobody in C-22, I tell him. "Go back to bed." "There is now," Talcott says. "He came back tonight. I heard him arrive around 2. He's been talking ever since." The way he says it, so matter of fact, so certain, makes my skin crawl. I've dealt with inmates having psychotic breaks before. This doesn't feel like that. Talcott isn't agitated or rambling. He's calm, almost relieved, like he's been waiting for confirmation of something he already knew. I walk to C-22 and stand in front of the door. The metal is cold under my hand, colder than it should be. The rest of the doors in this corridor hold heat from the heating system, but C-22 is ice cold. I press my ear against it, listening. At first, nothing. Then, so faint I'm not sure if I'm imagining it, I hear something. A whisper. Not words exactly, just the sound of someone speaking very quietly, the rhythm of conversation without any distinguishable syllables. And underneath that, a second voice responding. A conversation happening in an empty cell. I pull back from the door and key my radio. "Control, this is Morven in Block C. I need confirmation that C-22 is unoccupied." Static crackles for a moment before the response comes. "C-22 has been empty for 19 years, Morven. You know that. I need visual confirmation. Can you pull up the internal camera?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Morven, C-22 doesn't have an internal camera. Never has. It's listed as permanently decommissioned." I look at the door again. Every cell in this prison has a camera. Even the empty ones. It's standard procedure, but I realize I've never seen footage from C-22. In 19 years, not once. "Copy that," I say, and release the radio button. Talcott is still watching me from his cell. "You heard it," he says. It's not a question. I don't answer him. Instead, I continue my rounds, but my mind stays on C-22. When I reach the end of Block C and turn back, I see something that stops me in my tracks. The corridor is long, maybe 60 feet from end to end, and the overhead lights create pools of illumination with shadows between. In one of those shadows, near C-22, I see movement. A figure standing in front of the door. I quicken my pace, hand going to my flashlight, but when I reach that spot, there's nobody there. The corridor's empty, but the feeling remains, that sensation of having just missed seeing something, like when you catch movement in your peripheral vision but nothing's there when you turn to look. The rest of my shift passes without incident, but I can't shake the feeling that something has changed in Block C. When Harlan arrives for the morning briefing, I pull him aside. "I need to ask you about C-22. His expression closes off immediately. "What about it? Why was it decommissioned? What happened?" Harlan is quiet for a long moment. He's been working here longer than anyone else, 32 years, and he looks every day of it. Finally, he speaks, his voice low so the other guards won't hear. "Before your time, we had an inmate in C-22. This was 1986, maybe 1987. Man named Thomas Vickers. He was serving life for killing his wife and 2 kids. Quiet guy, never caused problems. Then one night, another guard, Patterson, he heard Vickers talking to someone. Went to check and found Vickers having a full conversation with the wall, asking questions, laughing at responses, the whole thing. Mental break? I ask. That's what Patterson thought. But when he opened the cell to check on Vickers, he saw something that made him quit the next day. Never would talk about what he saw, but Patterson was a tough guy, former military. Whatever it was shook him bad enough that he walked away from 20 years on the force. Harlan pauses, like he's deciding how much more to tell me. After that night, Vickers changed, stopped eating, stopped sleeping as far as anyone could tell, just sat in that cell talking to something nobody else could see. Other inmates started complaining about noises from C-22, whispers, they said, conversations in the middle of the night. What happened to Vickers? Dead. 3 weeks after Patterson quit. Guards found him one morning, died in his sleep apparently. No marks, no signs of distress. Heart just stopped. Medical examiner couldn't explain it. Said his body looked like it had aged 30 years overnight. But here's the thing that nobody talks about. After Vickers died, the noises didn't stop. Inmates kept reporting conversations from C-22. Guards kept hearing things. So the warden at the time, he made a decision. Sealed the cell. No more inmates in C-22, ever. And it's been empty since then? Harlan gives me a look that says I'm asking the wrong question. The cell has been empty since then. Whether it's been unoccupied is a different matter. Over the next few nights, I pay close attention to C-22. I don't tell anyone what I'm looking for because I'm not sure myself. But I notice patterns. At exactly 03:17 every morning, the temperature in the corridor drops. Not dramatically, but enough that I can see my breath for a few seconds. And during those moments, if I stand very still and listen, I can hear it. That whispered conversation, always just below the threshold of understanding. Reeve Talcott notices me paying attention. On my 4th night of observation, he calls out to me as I pass his cell. "You're trying to figure out who he's talking to," Talcott says. "Who?" "The man in C-22. You want to know who he's talking to?" I stop at his cell. Talcott is sitting on his bunk, arms wrapped around his knees. In the dim light, he looks younger than his 43 years, almost childlike. "There's nobody in C-22, I tell him again, but the words sound hollow even to me. "There's always been someone in C-22, Talcott says. "I've been here 6 years, and I've heard him every single night. At first I thought I was going crazy. Then I realized other inmates hear it too. We just don't talk about it because who would believe us?" "What does he say?" Talcott shakes his head. I can't make out words. But sometimes, late at night, he sounds like he's arguing. Like he's trying to convince someone of something. And the other voice, the one that answers him, it doesn't sound right. The rhythm is wrong, like someone speaking English, but they learned it from a book and never heard it spoken out loud. Against my better judgment, I find myself asking, "Do you ever see anything?" "Not see exactly," Talcott says slowly. "But sometimes when I'm lying in my bunk at night, I get this feeling, like someone is standing in the corridor looking in at me. And when I look towards C-22, I see a shadow in front of the door. Just a shadow, but it's darker than the other shadows, if that makes sense. More solid. And it doesn't move the way shadows should when the lights flicker." I'm about to respond when my radio crackles. "Morven, we're getting some weird feedback on the Block C corridor camera. Can you check the feed?" I key the radio. "What kind of feedback?" "Image distortion around cell 22. Started about 3 minutes ago. Picture keeps breaking up, going to static, then coming back." I look down the corridor toward C-22. From where I'm standing, everything looks normal. But as I watch, the overhead light nearest to that cell flickers once, twice, then steadies. "I'll check it out," I tell Control. I walk slowly down the corridor, my footsteps echoing off the concrete. The temperature drops as I approach C22, that same sudden chill I've felt at 0317 every night, but it's only 0245. Whatever triggers that cold spot, it's happening early tonight. When I reach C22, I place my hand on the door. The metal is so cold it almost burns. I can feel vibration through it, subtle, but definitely there, like someone is moving around inside the cell. I press my ear against the door again. The whispered conversation is clearer tonight. I still can't make out words, but I can hear the cadence, the rise and fall of question and answer. And underneath it, a new sound. Scratching. Like fingernails on concrete, rhythmic and persistent. My radio crackles again. Morven, the camera just went completely dead. We're getting no signal from Block C at all now. I pull back from the door, suddenly aware of how isolated I am. The nearest guard station is 2 corridors away. If something happened, if I needed help, I'd be alone for at least 2 minutes. 2 minutes can be a long time in a prison. Copy that. I'm going to do a manual sweep of the block. I start checking cells one by one, making sure every inmate is accounted for. Most are asleep or pretending to be. A few watch me pass with eyes that reflect the corridor lights like an animal's. When I reach Talcott's cell, he's standing at the door again. "It's louder tonight," he says. He's angry about something. Who's angry? The man in C22. Can't you hear it? He's almost shouting now. I listen. The whispered conversation has indeed grown louder, though I still can't distinguish words. But there's an urgency to it now, an intensity that wasn't there before. And the scratching sound has become more frantic, like whatever is making it is trying desperately to get through something. Then, without warning, it stops. The whispers, the scratching, everything. The silence is so complete it's almost painful. Even the usual background noises of the prison seem to have disappeared. No snoring, no shifting, no sounds from the ventilation system. Just absolute, crushing silence. In that silence, I hear something new. Footsteps. Not mine. These are coming from inside C22. Slow, deliberate steps, back and forth across the cell like someone pacing. 8 steps in one direction, turn, 8 steps back, over and over. My radio crackles with static, but no voice comes through. I try to key it, but nothing happens. The lights in the corridor flicker once, and in that moment of darkness, I see it. A figure standing in front of C22, visible only as a deeper darkness against the shadows. Tall, unnaturally thin, with arms that hang too long at its sides. The lights come back on, and the corridor is empty. But I can still hear those footsteps from inside the cell. Pacing. 8 steps, turn. 8 steps, turn. I find myself walking toward C22, drawn by something I don't understand. As I get closer, I notice something I've never seen before. Around the edges of the door, in the gaps between the metal and the frame, there's a faint light. Not the harsh white of the corridor lights. This is softer, more organic, almost like candlelight, but with a greenish tint. The footsteps inside the cell stop. The silence returns, heavier than before. And then I hear it. A voice, clear, distinct, speaking English for the first time. Elias. My name. Spoken in a whisper, but perfectly audible. I freeze, every instinct screaming at me to back away, to run, to get out of Block C and never come back. Elias Morven, 19 years, black hair to white. The corridor became part of you. You became part of the corridor. It's repeating things I said to myself, thoughts I never spoke aloud. The voice continues, that same whispered tone, but with a horrible eagerness underneath. Did you think we didn't notice? 19 years of footsteps, always at the same time, always the same route. 19 years of opening doors and closing them, checking bunks, counting bodies. 19 years of feeding us your routine, your pattern, your presence. Thank you, Elias. Thank you for the anchor. I back away from the door, my hand reaching for my radio even though I know it won't work. The temperature in the corridor has dropped so low I can see my breath with every exhale, thick white clouds in the flickering light. We've been waiting, the voice says. Thomas Vickers opened the door, but he wasn't strong enough to keep it open. We needed someone more dedicated. Someone who would return night after night, year after year. Someone who would become part of the routine, part of the structure. You've been perfect, Elias. Absolutely perfect. Down the corridor, I hear cell doors rattling. Not being opened, but shaking in their frames like something is pulling at them from the inside. The inmates are awake now. I can hear them shouting, but their voices sound distant and distorted, like I'm hearing them through water. C-22 was never meant to hold inmates, the voice continues. It was meant to be a door, and doors need to be maintained, need to be watched, need to be walked past at the same time every night for years and years until the pattern becomes so ingrained, so permanent, that the door can finally open all the way. The light around the edges of the door is growing brighter, that sickly green glow spilling into the corridor. I can see it spreading across the floor like liquid, moving against the laws of physics, flowing upward along the walls. I run. I don't care about procedure or protocol or anything except getting out of Block C. I sprint down the corridor, my boots echoing off the concrete, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind me, I hear the sound of metal groaning, and even though I don't want to look back, I can't help myself. The door of C-22 is opening, not being opened from inside, but opening itself, the metal warping and bending like it's made of rubber instead of steel. That green light is pouring out now, so bright I have to shield my eyes. And in that light, I see a figure emerging, tall, impossibly tall. Its proportions are all wrong, limbs too long, joints bending in ways that human joints don't bend. I reach the end of Block C and slam my hand on the security door release. Nothing happens. I try again, but the door won't open. I'm trapped in Block C with whatever is coming out of C-22. Talcott is at his cell door, hands wrapped around the bars. But he's not looking at me. He's looking past me, at the thing emerging from C-22, and there's an expression on his face I've never seen before. Not fear, wonder, like he's seeing something beautiful. It's okay, Talcott says, his voice dreamy and distant. He just wants to talk. He's been alone for so long, and he just wants someone to talk to. That's why Vickers died. He tried to stop talking, but if you talk to him, if you listen, he'll keep you alive. He'll keep us all alive. Other inmates are at their doors now, all of them watching with that same expression of rapture. The thing from C-22 is fully in the corridor now, and I can't look directly at it. My eyes slide off it like it's made of some material my brain refuses to process. But I can see its shadow, and the shadow is clearer than the thing itself. The shadow shows what it really is. Something that was never meant to exist in our world. My radio suddenly crackles to life. Harlan's voice, urgent and afraid. Morven, the cameras just came back online. What the hell is happening in Block C? Morven, respond. I try to speak, but my throat has closed up. All I can do is watch as the thing moves down the corridor, its shadow spreading across the walls and ceiling. Where its shadow touches, the paint blisters and peels, revealing older layers underneath. Revealing walls that look different. Older, like the prison is aging backward, returning to some earlier state. "He's looking for you, Elias," Talcott says. "He wants to thank you personally. 19 years of devotion. You earned this." The thing is getting closer. I can hear it breathing, if breathing is the right word. It sounds like wind through a tunnel, hollow and endless. The temperature has dropped so low that frost is forming on the metal doors, delicate patterns spreading across the steel like living things. I close my eyes. Maybe if I can't see it, it can't see me. Childish logic, but I'm out of options. I press myself against the security door, feeling the cold metal against my back, and wait. The breathing sound grows closer. I can feel it now, not just hear it. The air pressure in the corridor is changing, pressing against my eardrums, making my head pound. Something touches my shoulder. Not a hand. The texture is wrong, too smooth and too rough at the same time, like touching sandpaper made of silk. "Open your eyes, Elias." I don't want to. God, I don't want to. But I feel my eyelids lifting, my body responding to a command that didn't come from my own brain. The thing is right in front of me. I still can't see it clearly, but I can see its eyes. 3 of them, arranged in a triangle where a human face would be. They're black, completely black, but they reflect the light in the corridor, and in those reflections I see things. I see myself walking Block C night after night, year after year. I see my hair going from black to white. I see myself checking C-22, standing in front of that door, my presence feeding something, anchoring something, keeping something alive that should have died with Thomas Vickers. "You don't have to be afraid," the thing says. Its voice is clearer now, almost human, but with harmonics underneath that no human throat could produce. "You'll understand soon. They all understand, eventually." It gestures down the corridor with one of its 2 long arms. I follow the gesture and see that the inmates are no longer in their cells. They're standing in the corridor, arranged in a line, all facing C-22. Their eyes are black now, reflecting that green light. They're swaying slightly, moving in unison like grass and wind. "For 19 years, you maintained the door," the thing says. "Now, it's time for you to walk through it." The door to C-22 is wide open. Inside, I don't see a cell. I see a corridor, or something like a corridor, stretching away into impossible distance. The walls are wrong. The angles don't make sense, and the space seems to fold in on itself in ways that hurt to look at. But there's something at the end of that corridor. A light, not green, but pure white. So bright it should hurt to look at, but somehow doesn't. "What is this?" I manage to ask. "The place between," the thing says, "where we've always been, where we'll always be. Thomas Vickers found the door, but couldn't open it all the way. He didn't have the strength, the dedication. But you did. 19 years of walking the same path, thinking the same thoughts, becoming part of the routine so completely that you became part of the structure itself. You didn't just guard Block C, Elias. You became Block C. And now Block C can become something more." Behind me, I hear the security door open. Harlan's voice, distant and distorted. "Morven, the whole block is showing up as corrupted on the cameras. We're sending in the tactical team. Get out of there." I want to run toward that voice, toward safety, toward the normal world, but my feet won't move. I'm rooted to the spot, staring into that impossible corridor inside C-22, feeling something pulling at me, drawing me forward. You can leave if you want, the thing says, but you'll never stop seeing it now. Every prison you go to, you'll find a door like this one. Every corridor you walk, you'll hear us whispering, "You've been marked, Elias. You've been part of us for 19 years. The only choice now is whether you accept it or spend the rest of your life running from something you can't escape." Talcott appears at my side. Up close, I can see that his eyes aren't just reflecting the green light. They're generating it, glowing from within. "It's not so bad," he says, "once you stop fighting it, once you understand. We're all connected now. All of us in Block C. We're part of something bigger, something older, something that was here before the prison, before the city, before any of this existed. The tactical team is in Block C now. I can hear their boots on the concrete, their shouted commands. But their voices sound like they're coming from miles away, from another world entirely. 'Last chance, Elias,' the thing says. 'Walk through the door with us, or spend the rest of your life knowing what you helped create. Knowing that every night shift, every routine check, you were feeding something that should have stayed locked away.' I see the tactical team at the end of the corridor, gas masks and riot shields, moving in formation. They're yelling at me to get down, to move away from the inmates, but I can't hear the words clearly anymore. Everything is muffled except the voice of the thing from C-22. I make my choice. I don't know if it's the right one or the wrong one. Maybe there is no right choice anymore. Maybe there never was. I step toward C-22. Talcott smiles and takes my hand. His skin is cold, colder than the door was, colder than anything living should be. Together, we walk toward that impossible corridor, toward that pure white light at the end. Behind me, I hear Harlan screaming my name. I hear gunfire, though I don't know who's shooting at what. I hear the tactical team calling for backup, calling for the warden, calling for someone to explain what they're seeing. But it all fades as I step through the door. The sound cuts off like someone hit a switch. The cold disappears. For a moment I feel nothing, am nothing, exist in a state that isn't life or death, but something in between. Then I'm standing in that corridor, that impossible space that extends forever in all directions. Talcott is beside me, and behind me are the other inmates from Block C, all of them with those glowing eyes, all of them smiling. The thing from C-22 is here too, but it looks different now, less frightening, almost familiar. "Welcome home," it says, and I realize it's telling the truth. This feels like home, more than my apartment, more than any place I've lived. This is where I've been walking toward for 19 years, every night shift, every round through Block C. This is what the corridor became part of. This is what became part of me. I look back through the door, back at Block C, and see the tactical team standing in the corridor, staring at the empty cell. From their perspective, I know what they see. C-22 is empty again. The door is closed. The inmates are back in their cells, though they'll all claim they were never there. The cameras will show nothing unusual except a few minutes of static. And in the shift report, Harlan will write that Officer Elias Morvan suffered a medical emergency during his rounds and was transported to the hospital where he died of causes yet to be determined. The funeral will be small. People will say nice things about my 19 years of service. And in a few months, someone new will take over the night shift in Block C. Someone who will walk past C-22 every night at 03 o'clock. Someone who will hear the whispers. Someone who will notice the cold spot. Someone who will feed the door with their routine, their dedication, their presence. And in 19 more years, maybe less, they'll make the same choice I made. Or maybe they'll run and spend the rest of their life knowing what's waiting in C-22. what's always been waiting. What will always be waiting for someone dedicated enough, routine enough, to become part of the structure. The door closes behind me. I don't know if I can get back. I'm not sure I want to. Because here, in this place between places, I finally understand what Talcott meant. We're all connected, all part of something bigger, older, stranger than anything in the normal world. And after 19 years of walking the same corridor, checking the same cells, following the same routine, I'm exactly where I was always meant to be. The door to C-22 is quiet now. The next night shift guard will walk past it and hear nothing. The cell will remain empty, officially decommissioned, officially forgotten. But at exactly 0317, the temperature will drop. The lights will flicker. And somewhere, just below the threshold of hearing, the whispers will continue. Always the same conversation, never resolved, never ending. And one day, someone will stop to listen. Someone will press their ear against that cold metal door. Someone will hear their name whispered from inside an empty cell, and the cycle will begin again. Because that's what doors do. They open, they close, and they wait for someone to walk through. C-22 has been waiting for over 30 years. It can wait longer. It has nothing but time. I've been working the night watch at Ridgemont Correctional for 7 years, and I learned early that you don't ask questions about things that don't concern you. Keep your head down, do your rounds, file your reports, go home. Simple. That was my philosophy until Nurse Darcy Allerton came to me 3 weeks ago with something that changed everything. My name is Merrick Dole, and I work midnight to 8, mostly alone except for one other guard stationed at the main checkpoint. The prison holds about 1,800 inmates, and at night it becomes a different place entirely. Sounds carry differently. Shadows fall at strange angles. You hear things you can't quite identify and see movements that might be rats or might be something else. The medical wing is at the east end of the complex, separated from general population by 2 security doors and a long corridor that was added in the 90s. During the day, it's busy with nurses and doctors and inmates lined up for medications and checkups. At night, it's supposed to be empty, except for anyone in the infirmary beds, usually 2 or 3 inmates recovering from fights or illnesses. Darcy Allerton started working nights 6 months ago. She's maybe 30, efficient and professional, the kind of nurse who doesn't waste words or time. We've had maybe a dozen conversations, all of them brief and work-related. So, when she stopped me during my rounds and asked if we could talk somewhere private, I knew something was wrong. We went to the break room, a windowless space with a coffee maker and uncomfortable chairs. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her hands shaking slightly as she poured coffee. "I need you to see something," she said. "But I need you to promise you won't think I'm crazy. I've worked here 7 years. I've seen plenty of crazy." She pulled out a tablet and queued up a video file. "This is from the security camera in the med unit corridor. 3 weeks ago, at 0317 exactly. Watch." The video showed the corridor outside the medical wing. Empty, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Everything normal. Then, at 0317, the image distorted. Not completely, just a flicker, like static on an old television. It lasted maybe 2 seconds. Then the image cleared. "Okay," I said. "Camera glitch. Happens all the time. Keep watching." She fast-forwarded to the next night. Same time, same corridor. At 0317, the same distortion. Then the next night, and the next, every single night for 3 weeks. At exactly 0317, the camera feed showed 2 seconds of static. "Could be a wiring issue," I said. short circuit triggering at the same time every night. That's what I thought. So I checked the other cameras. She pulled up more footage. Cameras in the yard, the cafeteria, the cell blocks, all of them working perfectly. Only the camera outside the medical wing showed this distortion, and only at 0317. I reported it to maintenance, Darcy continued. They checked the camera, the wiring, everything. They said there's nothing wrong. The equipment is functioning normally, but every night, same time, same glitch. Strange, but I don't see why you need me to... There's more. She pulled up another file. This is the digital log of everyone entering and exiting the medical wing. It's automatically generated by the security doors. Every time someone swipes their card or uses the keypad, it records the date, time, and ID number. She showed me the log for the past 3 weeks. Entries during the day were normal. Dozens of them as nurses and doctors and inmates came and went. But every night at 0317, the log showed something impossible. An entry. Someone swiping into the medical wing. But the ID number was listed as 0000000, which isn't assigned to anyone. Ghost in the machine, I said, though I was starting to feel uneasy. Database error. Every night for 3 weeks? At exactly the same time? Darcy shook her head. I checked the physical logs, too, the handwritten ones we keep as backup, and there's something else. She showed me the logbook, the one nurses are supposed to sign when they administer medications. Darcy's handwriting was neat and clear, but on several pages there were entries that looked different. The handwriting was similar, but not quite the same. The letters formed slightly differently. I didn't write these, Darcy said, pointing to the questionable entries. But they're dated and timed. All of them at 0317. Someone is entering the medical wing every night, administering medications and logging it. But when I check the medication inventory, nothing is missing. When I check on the inmates in the infirmary, they don't remember anyone coming to see them. I studied the logbook. The entries were specific. Inmate Jonah Fell, bed 3, administered pain medication. Inmate Carter Hayes, bed 1, vital signs checked. All routine medical tasks. All logged at 0317. Have you talked to these inmates? I tried talking to Jonah Fell. He's been in the infirmary for 2 weeks with a broken leg. When I asked him if anyone gave him medication at night, he looked at me like I was insane. But then he said something strange. He said every night around 3 he hears footsteps in the corridor. He hears the security door open. He hears someone walking into the infirmary. But when he looks, there's nobody there. And the camera? I pulled the infirmary camera footage. She showed me. The interior camera had a clear view of all 4 beds. The timestamp showed 0317. I watched as the image flickered with that same static. When it cleared, nothing had changed. The beds were the same, the inmates were the same. But Jonah Fell, lying in bed 3, turned his head suddenly to look at something off camera. His expression changed, shifting from half asleep to alert. His lips moved like he was speaking to someone. The video continued for 30 seconds. Fell kept looking at that same spot, kept moving his lips, occasionally nodding like he was listening to responses. Then, at 0317 and 35 seconds, he looked away, settled back into his pillow, and closed his eyes. The whole interaction lasted 35 seconds exactly. What did he say when you asked him about this? He said he talks to the nurse who comes to check on him every night. He described her, mid-30s, blonde hair in a bun, wearing scrubs with a floral pattern. But Merrick, I'm the only night nurse. I have brown hair and I wear solid blue scrubs. Nobody else matches that description. I didn't know what to say. 7 years working nights and I'd seen strange things, heard unexplained sounds, but this was different. This had documentation, logs, video evidence of something that shouldn't exist. "There's one more thing," Darcy said. She pulled up a final video file. "This is from last night. I stayed late specifically to see what happens at 0317. I was in the nurses' station right next to the corridor. Watch." The video showed the corridor from a different angle, this one from the nurses' station camera. At 0316, the corridor was empty. At 0317, the static appeared. But this time, when the image cleared, there was a figure in the corridor. Blurry, indistinct, but definitely there. It walked toward the security door leading to the infirmary. The door didn't open, but the figure passed through it anyway, becoming even less distinct, almost transparent. Darcy appeared in the frame, coming out of the nurses' station. She walked to the security door and looked through the window. Even on the grainy video, I could see her expression. She saw something that terrified her. "What did you see?" I asked. Her hands were shaking worse now. A woman, mid-30s, blonde hair, floral scrubs, standing next to Jonah Fell's bed, checking his IV. She looked completely solid, completely real. I watched her for maybe 10 seconds. Then she turned and looked directly at me. And she smiled, and she walked toward the door. I ran back to the nurses' station because I didn't want her to reach me, didn't want her to walk through that door while I was standing there. When I looked again, she was gone. But Jonah Fell was sitting up in bed, waving at the empty air like he was saying goodbye to someone. I studied Darcy's face. She wasn't lying, she wasn't having a breakdown. She was genuinely scared of something she'd seen, something that defied rational explanation. "I'll come by tonight," I said. "I'll be there at 0317, we'll both watch." She looked relieved. "Thank you. I just need someone else to see it, to confirm I'm not losing my mind." That night, I adjusted my rounds to be near the medical wing at 0315. I found Darcy in the nurses' station. The lights dimmed, her eyes fixed on the clock. "Fell is still in bed 3, she said. "The other infirmary beds are empty. I made sure of it." We waited. I'd been in tense situations before. Riots and lockdowns and fights. But this was different. This was anticipation of something unknown, something that shouldn't exist. My watch showed 3:16. The corridor was empty, the security door locked, everything normal. Then 0317 arrived. The lights flickered. Not a dramatic surge, but a subtle dimming, like someone had turned down the voltage for just a moment. In that moment, I heard it. Footsteps in the corridor, not my imagination. Clear, distinct footsteps. The soft squeak of rubber-soled shoes on linoleum. Darcy grabbed my arm. "Do you hear it?" I nodded. The footsteps were coming from the direction of the main corridor approaching the medical wing security door. I moved to the window in the nurses' station, looking out at the corridor. Empty. But the footsteps continued, growing closer. Then they stopped, right in front of the security door. I heard a beep, the sound the door makes when someone swipes a valid card. The lock disengaged with its characteristic click, but the door didn't move. It stayed closed. Then, impossibly, I heard footsteps on the other side of the door, inside the secured medical wing corridor moving toward the infirmary. Darcy had pulled up the camera feeds on her tablet. The corridor camera showed static. The infirmary camera showed Jonah Fell in bed 3, his eyes open, looking toward the door with an expression of recognition. "She's in there with him," Darcy whispered. "Right now." I moved to the infirmary door and looked through the window. Fell was definitely looking at something, talking to something, but the room appeared empty. I pushed the door open as quietly as possible and stepped inside. The temperature was wrong. The rest of the medical wing was comfortably warm, but the infirmary was cold. Cold enough that my breath misted in front of my face. Fel was still talking, his voice low and conversational. "Feels better today, yeah. The pain's not as bad. You think I can get out of here soon?" He paused, listening to a response I couldn't hear. "Next week? That's longer than I thought, but I guess you're the expert." I cleared my throat. Fel turned to look at me, surprised. "Officer Dole, didn't hear you come in." "Who are you talking to, Fel?" He looked confused. "The nurse. She's right here." He gestured to the empty space beside his bed. "She comes every night to check on me. Didn't you see her when you came in? There's nobody here but you and me." Fel's expression changed, cycling through confusion to concern to something that looked like fear. "But she's standing right there. Can't you see her? She's looking at you right now." I felt my skin crawl. The empty space Fel was gesturing to was directly in front of me, maybe 3 feet away. I saw nothing, but I felt something. A presence. A displacement of air, like when someone stands too close to you. "Fel, there's no one there." "She says you can't see her because you're not ready," Fel said, his voice shaking now. "She says most people can't. Only the ones who are supposed to. She says I'm special. She's been taking care of me. What's her name?" "She never told me." Fel was staring at that empty space with increasing fear. "Wait, why are you shaking your head? What's wrong? Why are you looking at me like that?" But Fel wasn't talking to me. He was talking to the thing I couldn't see. The presence that was making the room cold. That was leaving footsteps in the corridor and entries in the logbook. "No," Fel said, his voice rising. "No, I don't want to, please. I don't want to know. I want to stay here. I want to stay normal. Please." He was pressing himself back against his pillow, his eyes wide and locked on that empty space. "Please don't show me. Please don't make me see. I'll be good. I won't tell anyone. I promise I won't." Fel started screaming. Not words, just raw terror, his hands clutching at his head. I rushed to his bed, tried to calm him, but he was beyond reach. Darcy came running in, other staff alerted by the commotion. They sedated Fel, got him quiet, but his eyes remained wide and terrified. When he finally spoke again, his voice was a whisper. "The door. She showed me the door, the one that never closed. The one that can't close. Oh God, it's still open." He kept repeating those words. "The door can't close," over and over, until the sedatives pulled him under completely. When the doctor examined him, they found nothing physically wrong. No head injury, no signs of distress beyond psychological trauma. But that night changed things. I started paying attention to the medical wing in ways I never had before. I pulled records going back years and found patterns. Every few months, there would be an inmate in the infirmary who reported seeing a nurse that didn't exist. Every few months, the security logs would show those phantom entries at 0317. And every few months, the camera would develop that same static glitch. I talked to older guards, people who'd worked at Ridgemont longer than me. One of them, a guy named Patterson who'd been there 15 years, he knew something. "There was a nurse," he told me. "This was before your time. Around 2008, maybe 2009. Name was Victoria Chen. Worked nights, took care of inmates in the infirmary. Good nurse, really cared about her patients. Maybe cared too much." "What happened to her?" Patterson looked uncomfortable. "There was an inmate, violent guy, serving life for murder. He was in the infirmary recovering from appendix surgery. Middle of the night, around 3 in the morning, he attacked Nurse Chen. Broke her neck. By the time security arrived, she was dead. The inmate said she was trying to open a door that shouldn't be opened, that he was trying to stop her, trying to save everyone. Made no sense. They transferred him to psychiatric facility and that was that. Where did this happen? The old infirmary. It was in a different location back then, where the storage rooms are now. They built the new medical wing after that incident. Didn't want the bad association. But they kept the same security system, same camera setup, just moved it to a different building. I went to the storage area that night, the place where the old infirmary had been. It was full of broken furniture and old equipment, dimly lit by a single bulb. In the back corner, I found something that made me stop. A door, not a modern institutional door, but an older one, heavy wood with a small window set at eye level. The door had been sealed with metal plates bolted across it, maybe a dozen of them, like someone had been very serious about making sure it never opened. But the plates were old, rusted, and one of them in the corner had worked loose, leaving a gap maybe an inch wide. I approached the door carefully. Even from several feet away, I could feel cold air flowing from that gap. Air that smelled wrong, stale and chemical and somehow organic, all at once. I got close enough to peer through the gap into the space beyond. Darkness. Complete and absolute darkness that seemed to absorb the light from my flashlight. But in that darkness, I saw movement. Things shifting. Shapes that didn't make sense, geometries that hurt to look at. Then I heard it. A voice, faint but clear, coming from beyond the door. Merrick. My name, spoken in a woman's voice, professionally pleasant like a nurse addressing a patient. The door never closed properly. It should have closed in 2009, but the seal was incomplete. I've been trying to close it. That's all I've been doing. Every night at 03:17, when the barrier is thinnest, I come back. I try to push the door closed, but I can't do it alone. Victoria Chen? What's left of her? What stayed behind to finish the work? The inmate understood. He tried to help, but he went about it wrong. Violence doesn't close doors like this. Only intention, only purpose, only someone willing to stand in the gap and hold the line. The shapes in the darkness were becoming clearer. I saw what looked like hands, dozens of them, pressing against the other side of the door. But the hands had too many fingers, or not enough, or fingers that bent in ways fingers shouldn't bend. What's on the other side? Somewhere that touches every prison, every cell, every locked door. A space between spaces where the desperate and the damned collect. When I died, the door was open. Some of me fell through. But I caught the edge, held on, been holding on for years, trying to close it, trying to keep them from coming through. How do I help? Come to the infirmary at 3:17. Stand where I stood. Be the anchor I can't be anymore. The door needs someone living, someone real, someone willing to see it. You can see it now. The seal is broken. You're ready. The voice faded. The shapes in the darkness receded. I was left standing in front of a sealed door that radiated cold and wrongness. I told Darcy everything that night. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long time. "I believe you," she finally said. "And I think we should do what she asks. Because whatever's on the other side of that door, I don't want it coming through." So, at 03:17 the next night, we stood together in the infirmary. Fell had been transferred to psychiatric. The beds were empty, the room was silent. We waited. The lights flickered, the temperature dropped. And this time, we both saw her. Victoria Chen, or what remained of her, standing between Fell's empty bed and the wall. She looked solid, real, but there was something wrong about her. She was too still, didn't breathe, didn't blink. And around the edges of her form she was slightly transparent, like a photograph that had been exposed to light for too long. "Thank you for being here," she said. Her voice had no echo, no resonance. It sounded flat, like it wasn't coming from her throat but from the air itself. "I need you to see. Really see. Not just me, but the door, the one I've been holding closed." The wall behind her changed. The institutional paint and concrete didn't disappear, but something overlaid it, became visible through it. The old wooden door from the storage room, but here in the infirmary, existing in the same space as the wall. And it was moving, vibrating in its frame like something was pushing against it from the other side. "It wants to open," Victoria said. "Every night it gets a little weaker. Every night those things on the other side push a little harder. I've been using what's left of my presence, my intention, to keep it closed. But I'm fading. Soon I won't be strong enough." The door pulsed, bulging outward like something massive had thrown itself against it. I could see the metal plates straining, hear them groaning under pressure. "What do we do?" Darcy asked. "Witness," Victoria said. "That's the first step. See the door, acknowledge it. The more people who see it, who know it exists, the stronger the seal becomes. Secrets give these things power. Acknowledgement weakens them." I stared at the door, forcing myself to really look at it, to accept that it was real. Beside me, Darcy was doing the same. And as we focused on it, I saw the door stop pulsing. The pressure from the other side seemed to decrease just slightly. "Good," Victoria said. "But it's not enough. Someone needs to come here every night. Someone needs to stand witness at 0317 when the barrier is thinnest. Can you do that?" We both nodded. What else could we do? For the next 2 weeks, Darcy and I took turns being in the infirmary at 0317. Every night, the same thing happened. The lights flickered. Victoria appeared. The door became visible. We stood and watched as she pressed her translucent hands against it, holding back whatever pushed from the other side. And every night our presence seemed to help. The door became less active, the cold less intense. But then something changed. 3 nights ago, Victoria didn't appear. At 0317, the lights flickered as usual, but when they steadied, the infirmary was empty. Except the door was visible without her, and it was moving more violently than I'd ever seen. The metal plates were rattling. One of them had bent significantly, and I could see gaps forming around the edges of the door frame. I called Darcy immediately. "Victoria didn't show up. The door is worse. I am coming." She arrived within minutes. Together we watched as the door pulsed and strained, and then we heard it. Not from beyond the door, but from the corridor outside. Footsteps. But these were wrong, heavy and dragging, like something that didn't quite know how to walk in our world. The infirmary door opened and an inmate walked in. I recognized him. Carter Hayes, one of the names from the phantom log entries. He'd been released from the infirmary a week ago, but something was wrong with him. He moved stiffly, his eyes were unfocused, and when he opened his mouth to speak, the voice that came out wasn't his. "The nurse is gone. The anchor is severed. The door will open whether you witness it or not." Hayes walked toward the visible door, his hand reaching out. Darcy tried to stop him, but he pushed her aside with the strength that shouldn't have been possible for his frame. His hand touched the door, and the wood began to smoke, to char, to crumble. "No!" I grabbed Hayes, pulled him back, but it was too late. Where his hand had touched the door, a hole had formed. Not large, maybe the size of a quarter, but through it I could see that impossible darkness, those writhing shapes. And from the hole, something was emerging. A hand, but not like any human hand. It had fingers that ended in points sharp enough to pierce steel. The hand groped blindly, searching for the edges of the hole, trying to pull it wider. I could hear sounds from the other side now. Not words, but something between screaming and laughter and the sound of metal scraping on metal. Hayes collapsed. Whatever had been controlling him leaving his body. He looked around confused, then saw the door and the hand emerging from it and started screaming. Darcy was on the phone calling for help, but I knew it wouldn't matter. Whatever was coming through wouldn't care about security protocols or backup teams. I looked around for something, anything to stop it. Then I saw her. Victoria, but different now. She was more transparent than before, barely visible, her form flickering like a dying light bulb. She was looking at the door with an expression of grief and resignation. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. "I couldn't hold on anymore. The connection was too weak. I'm fading completely, but there's still a way. Tell me." "Someone has to take my place. Someone living. They'll be anchored between worlds, trapped like I was, but they can hold the door closed. Permanently. For how long? Forever, or until they fade like I did. Could be years, could be decades, but they won't age, won't die. They'll just exist, holding the door, witnessing the barrier." The hand from beyond had found the edge of the hole and was pulling. The hole was widening, splinters of wood and fragments of metal falling away. More shapes were visible now through the opening, things with too many limbs, faces where faces shouldn't be. "I'll do it," Darcy said. "No." I grabbed her arm. "I'll do it. You have a family. I don't." "Neither of you has to," Victoria said. "But someone does, and quickly. Once they come through, they don't go back. They'll spread through the prison, through the city, through everywhere. This door is just one of thousands, and they're all watching, all waiting to see if this one opens. If it does, the others will follow." The hand had pulled the hole wide enough now that something was pushing through. A head, or what passed for one in whatever dimension these things came from. It had eyes, so many eyes, all of them locked on us. I made my decision. I pushed Darcy toward the exit. "Get out. Lock the door behind you. Don't let anyone in until morning." "Merrick, no. Do it." I turned to Victoria. "What do I do?" "Stand at the door. Place your hands on it. Accept the connection. It will hurt. It will change you. But it will work." I approached the door as the thing from the other side squeezed more of itself through the hole. Its body was coming through now, all angles and joints that bent impossibly. I could smell it, a smell like burning copper and rotting flowers. I placed my hands on the door. The cold hit me first, so intense it felt like my hands were being burned. Then pain, shooting up my arms, through my chest, into my head. I felt something pulling at me, not physically, but at something deeper. At whatever makes me me, my consciousness was being stretched, pulled thin, anchored to this door and this moment and this place. And then I understood. I could feel the door. Really feel it. Like it was part of my body. I could sense the thing trying to come through as clearly as I could sense my own heartbeat. And I could push back. I pushed. With everything I had, every ounce of will and intention and desperate fear, I pushed against that thing, forcing it back through the hole. It resisted, its claws digging into the frame, but I was connected now, part of the door, and in this space between spaces I was stronger. The thing retreated. The hole began to close, the wood and metal reforming, sealing. I heard Victoria's voice one last time, faint and fading. "Thank you. I can rest now. I can finally rest." Then she was gone. Completely gone. And I was alone, standing with my hands on a door that existed between worlds, feeling the pressure from the other side, the constant push of things that wanted through. I understood now that I would feel this pressure forever. Every moment of every day. 0317 would be the worst, when the barrier was thinnest, but it would never completely go away. I heard pounding on the infirmary door. Darcy's voice. "Merrick, open up. Are you okay?" I tried to respond, but found I couldn't speak. My voice was gone, or maybe it existed in both worlds now and couldn't be heard in either. I tried to step away from the door, but my hands wouldn't move. They were fused to it, or I was fused to it, or there was no difference anymore. Darcy got the door open. She came in with security, with medical staff, all of them shouting questions. They found Carter Hayes unconscious on the floor. They found the infirmary empty. They didn't find me, because I was still there, standing at the door, hands pressed against wood that only existed in one world. I could see them, hear them, but they looked through me like I was air. I watched Darcy search the room, calling my name, her voice breaking. I wanted to answer but couldn't. Hours passed. They took Hayes to medical. They searched the entire facility. They found no trace of Merrick Dole. The official report would say I left my post without permission, that I abandoned my position, that I couldn't be found. There would be an investigation, some administrative hearings, and then the file would be closed. But I'm still here, in the infirmary of Ridgemont Correctional Facility, at the door that can't close, that can't open, that exists in the spaces between. I feel them on the other side, pushing every moment, testing the seal, looking for weakness. And I push back, hold the line, keep them from coming through. Darcy still comes to the infirmary at 0317 every night. She stands in the same spot I stood, and I think sometimes she can sense me. She brings her tablet and logs phantom entries for a guard who doesn't exist anymore, maintaining the documentation of something that shouldn't be. At 0317, the lights still flicker. The temperature still drops. And if you're watching very carefully, you might see a shape in the corner where the wall meets the floor. A shadow that doesn't match any furniture, that doesn't move even when the lights shift. That's me, or what's left of me, standing eternal witness to a door that tried to open. The barrier holds. For now. For as long as I can maintain it. But I'm alone here in a way Victoria never prepared me for. Alone, between worlds, neither living nor dead, neither here nor there. And every night at Ojo 317, I feel the things on the other side push harder. They know I'm here. They know I'm the only thing keeping them out. And they're very, very patient. Darcy just came in. It's 0316. She's setting up her tablet, preparing to document another phantom entry. She doesn't know I'm right here, 5 feet away, watching her. She doesn't know that when she stands witness, it helps. It strengthens the seal just enough to get me through another day. 317 arrives. The lights flicker. Darcy stands and stares at the empty wall where the door exists for me. And I press my hands harder against the cold wood, push back against the tide of wrongness trying to flood through. The entry in the log will read, Officer Merrick Dole, witnessed and confirmed. 0317, barrier maintained. Nobody will ever read it. Nobody will ever believe it. But it's true. All of it is true. The door can't close. The door can't open. And I stand here in between, holding them back, one night at a time, one moment at a time, forever. I found the logbook on a Tuesday in late September, tucked behind a filing cabinet in the old guard station that hasn't been used since they renovated in 2015. I'm Silas Rennick, and I've worked at Blackmore State Prison for 11 years, long enough to know that old paperwork turns up in strange places. What made this one different was that when I opened it, I saw my own handwriting. Not handwriting similar to mine. My exact handwriting, the way I form my capital S, the way I cross my sevens, the specific way I abbreviate inmate as INM, because I've always been lazy about writing out full words. My handwriting, but the date on the page was March 15th, 1998. I was 9 years old in Nikate. The entry read, Night rounds completed. Block D-Wing. All inmates accounted for. Generator shut down at 0303, restart at 0304, 1-minute outage as expected. Inmate Ketteridge reported usual complaint about door. No action taken. I flipped through the logbook. More entries, all in my handwriting, dated throughout 1998. Then nothing for years. Then entries again in 2003, same handwriting. Then 2007, then 2011, then 2019, then 21. All the entries were brief, routine patrol notes, but they all mentioned the same things. The generator shutting down at 0303, something about a door, and an inmate named Ketteridge. I checked the current roster. We had an Orion Ketteridge in D-Wing. He'd been here 3 years, serving 10 for armed robbery. I checked the historical records. There had been an Orion Ketteridge in 98 too, and 2003, and every year that appeared in the logbook. Same name, sometimes same inmate number, sometimes different. Records showed he'd been released, then came back, then released again, in a cycle that didn't make sense. I showed the logbook to my partner Truman Vale during our briefing. Truman's worked here even longer than me, 16 years, and he's seen everything. But when he looked at the entries, his expression changed. "Where did you find this?" His voice was tight. "Old guard station. Why?" "Because I've seen this before." He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo he'd taken years ago. Another logbook page, different book, but similar entries, his handwriting this time, dated 2004. I found it 5 years ago and thought it was some kind of joke, someone copying my handwriting to mess with me, but then I started paying attention. To what? The generator. It shuts down every night at 0303. 1 minute exactly. Then it restarts. Happens like clockwork, and maintenance swears there's nothing wrong with it. I'd noticed the generator thing myself, but never thought much about it. Power flickers happen in old buildings, but the precision of it, every night at the same time, that was strange. "And the inmate?" I asked. "Ketteridge?" Truman closed his eyes, like he was trying to remember something he'd been trying to forget. I talked to him once about the door. He said there's a door in D-Wing that doesn't lock right. Said he can see through the gap when the lights go out. See things in the corridor that aren't there during the day. "Which door?" "Cell D27. His cell." D-Wing is the oldest part of Blackmore, built in 1952. The cells are small and the bars are thick steel, the kind they don't make anymore. Cell D27 is at the end of the corridor, right next to the utility closet that houses the backup generator. I'd walked past it thousands of times and never noticed anything unusual about the door. That night, I made sure my rounds took me through D-Wing at exactly 03 Aqua. Truman came with me, despite it not being his sector. The corridor was quiet, most inmates sleeping, a few awake but silent. The overhead lights buzzed and flickered the way they always did. At 0302, I positioned myself outside D27. Through the bars, I could see Orion Ketteridge sitting on his bunk, awake, staring at the door. He was a thin man, maybe 40, with graying hair and eyes that never seemed to settle on anything for long. "Evening, Ketteridge," I said quietly. He jumped slightly, then looked at me. "Officer Rennick, you're here for it." "For what?" "The moment, 303. You're here to watch what happens." Before I could respond, the lights went out. Complete darkness except for the emergency exit signs at either end of the corridor. Then a mechanical sound, the generator winding down, and even those exit signs went dark. Absolute blackness. I heard Truman next to me, his breathing suddenly loud in the silence. Then I heard it. From inside D27, from inside Ketteridge's cell, A sound like footsteps. Not Ketteridge's footsteps. He was still sitting on his bunk. I could hear his breathing from a different location. These were additional footsteps, pacing back and forth across the small cell. Then light. The emergency generator kicked in, the exit signs glowed, and the corridor lights flickered back to life. I looked into D27. Ketteridge was still sitting in the same position. The cell was empty, except for him. But on the wall behind his bunk, I saw something that hadn't been there before. Scratches. Fresh scratches. The metal showing bright silver against the old gray paint. 3 lines, parallel, like someone had dragged their fingers across the wall while walking past. "Did you see it?" Ketteridge asked. His voice was calm, resigned, like he'd asked this question many times before. "See what?" "The other one. The one who walks through during the dark. The one who's been walking through since 1952. Truman grabbed my arm. We should go. But I couldn't move. I was staring at those scratches, fresh and deep and absolutely impossible. "He doesn't mean any harm," Ketteridge continued. "He's just stuck, trapped in the moment between when the generator goes down and when it comes back up. 1 minute every night he gets to exist. He paces the cell and he leaves marks, and then he's gone again." "Who is he?" "I don't know his name. The logbooks might have it, but I've never been able to find them all. I just know he was here in 1952 when something happened. Something that caught him between moments, and he's been pacing this cell ever since." Truman pulled me away and we walked quickly back to the guard station. Neither of us spoke until we were there, door closed, lights bright. "I looked into this years ago," Truman finally said. "After I found my logbook entry. There was an incident in 1952. An inmate in D27 died during a power outage. Generator failed, and he was in isolation. When power came back, he was dead. No marks, no violence, just dead. Heart failure, they said. But the cell was torn up, scratches everywhere, like he'd been trying to claw his way out. Name? Records from back then are spotty. I found a partial file, inmate number 04273. No name recorded, just that he died in D27 during a 1-minute power outage at 0303. I pulled out the logbook I'd found, flipped to the earliest entry from 98. The handwriting was mine, but it couldn't be mine. I read the entry again, more carefully this time. Night rounds completed, Block D-Wing, all inmates accounted for. Generator shut down at 0303, restart at 0304, 1-minute outage as expected. Inmate Ketteridge reported usual complaint about door. No action taken. Expected, I said. The entry says as expected, like it's routine, like whoever wrote this knew the generator would shut down. And the date, Truman added. March 15th, 1998. That was a Sunday. I can check the old duty rosters. He pulled up archived schedules on the computer. March 15th, 1998 fell on a Sunday. Night shift was covered by Officer Samuel Rennick. My father. He'd worked at Blackmore before retiring in 2001. He died in 2009, never talked much about his time here. But his handwriting had been almost identical to mine. My mother used to joke that we both wrote like doctors. I looked at the logbook again. Not my handwriting, my father's, but so similar I'd mistaken it for my own. "Who was on duty in 2003?" I asked. Truman checked. March 15th, 2003, night shift, Officer Samuel Rennick. And 2007? Your father again. Every entry in that logbook, every March 15th, your father was working night shift. I felt cold. My father had written these entries over a span of years, always on March 15th, always noting the same things. The generator failure, the door, Ketteridge. Truman, Check something else. The inmate Ketteridge. Is there a record of him from all those years? Truman's fingers moved across the keyboard. His expression grew more troubled with each search. There's an Orion Ketteridge in the system from 1997, released 2000, reincarcerated 2002, released 2005, back again 2006, released 2009, back 2010, released 2013, back 2018, still here now. Same person every time? According to the records, yes. Same inmate number, 08291. But that's impossible. He'd have to be in his 60s at least. The Ketteridge in D27 right now looks 40. I knew what I had to do. I went to D27 and asked to speak with Ketteridge. He came to the bars, that same unfocused look in his eyes. "How long have you been here?" I asked. "This time? 3 years. No, I mean total, all the times combined." Ketteridge smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. "I don't know anymore. I've lost count. Sometimes I think I've only been here once. Sometimes I think I've always been here. Time gets confused when you're in D27. Do you remember my father? Officer Rennick?" The smile faded. "Sam, yes." He understood. He kept the logs. He tried to map it out, figure out the pattern. "Did he ever tell you about it?" "He never told me anything about this place. Smart man. Some things shouldn't be passed down." Ketteridge looked down the corridor toward the utility closet. "The generator is original. From 1952. They've replaced parts, but the core is the same. And there's something wrong with it, has been since that first power failure. It's supposed to run continuously, but every night at 03:03 it shuts down for exactly 1 minute. Maintenance has tried everything, but they can't fix it." Why 03:03? That's when he died. The inmate in 1952, 03:03. And in that 1 minute of darkness, he comes back. Just for 60 seconds. He paces the cell and he leaves marks, and then the power comes back and he's gone. But the marks remain. They build up, layer upon layer, year after year. I looked at the walls of D27. Now that I was looking for them, I could see the scratches. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Faint silver lines covering every surface. How had I never noticed before? "And you?" I asked. "Why do you keep coming back?" "I don't know. The first time was coincidence. I got arrested, ended up here, got assigned to D27. When I was released, I thought I was done. But then I'd start hearing things. Footsteps at 03:03 wherever I was. I'd see scratches appearing on walls. I'd feel him, the pacing inmate, even though I was miles away. And eventually, I'd make a mistake, break a rule, do something that would send me back here, always to D27. You're connected to him. We're all connected to him. Everyone who spends time in D27 becomes part of the pattern. Your father knew. That's why he kept the logs. He was trying to document it, trying to understand it. And now you're here doing the same thing he did." Over the next several days, I searched for more logbooks. I found them in odd places, in a box of cleaning supplies, in the chaplain's old office, in a maintenance closet. Different books, different years, but all containing entries from March 15th, and not just my father's handwriting. I found entries from 1962, 1973, 1984, all different guards, all noting the same things. Generator failure, 1 minute. Ketteridge's complaint, the door. Except Ketteridge's name changed. In earlier logs he was called different names. Morrison, Blackwell, Chen. Always a different name, but always in D27, always complaining about the door. I compiled everything and showed it to Truman. We spread the logs across the break room table, a timeline of entries spanning 70 years. "It's a loop," Truman said. "The inmate who died in 1952, he's stuck in a 1-minute loop, and somehow he's pulling other people into it. Ketteridge, or whatever his real name is, he's become part of the pattern, and the guards who work here, they document it. But why? What's the point? Maybe there isn't one. Maybe it's just what happens when someone dies in exactly the wrong way at exactly the wrong time. They get caught, stuck, and they stay stuck forever." That night, I was scheduled for rounds again. I dreaded 03 accost, but I went to D-Wing anyway, driven by something I couldn't name. Truman came with me again. At 0302, we were outside D27. Ketteridge was awake, waiting. "You should write it down," he said. "In the log, like your father did. It helps." "Helps what?" "Helps him remember he existed, the inmate who died. Without the logs, without the documentation, he'd fade completely. The 1 minute he gets each night would shrink to seconds, then nothing. But as long as someone writes it down, acknowledges it happened, he remains. It's a kind of memorial." The lights went out at 0303. In the darkness, I heard the footsteps inside D27, pacing back and forth. 8 steps in one direction. Pause. 8 steps back. Then a sound I hadn't heard before. Breathing. Rapid, panicked breathing. Truman's hand found my shoulder in the darkness. "Do you hear that?" Yes. The breathing grew more frantic. Then a voice so faint I almost missed it. "Help me, please. I can't get out. The door won't open. I can't get out." The lights came back. The voice cut off. Inside D27, Ketteridge was standing now, staring at the wall behind his bunk, where new scratches had appeared. "He was in isolation," Ketteridge said quietly. "When the power failed. The door mechanism was electric. When the generator went down, the door locked. He couldn't get out. He spent his last minute alive trying to claw through the wall, trying to escape. And that's what he does every night. Relives that minute, tries to escape a cell that doesn't exist anymore." I understood then. The scratches weren't random, they were deliberate, focused on one section of wall. He was trying to dig through, trying to break out during his 1 minute of existence. "Has anyone tried to help him?" I asked. "How? He's dead, has been for 70 years. This is just an echo, a recording playing back every night at the same time." But I thought about the logbooks, about my father's meticulous documentation. He hadn't just been recording events. He'd been bearing witness, acknowledging that this happened, that someone suffered, that someone was still suffering. I went back to the guard station and found a blank logbook. On a fresh page, I wrote, "October 3rd, 2021. Night rounds completed. Block D-Wing. At 0303. Generator failure. 1 minute outage. During outage, sounds from D27. Cell occupied by inmate Orion Ketteridge. 08291. Pacing footsteps, scratching sounds, voice requesting help. Lights restored at 0304. Inmate Ketteridge unharmed. Fresh scratches on west wall. Acknowledging unknown inmate, number 04273, who died in this cell March 15, 1952. His suffering is witnessed. His moment is recorded." I felt foolish writing it. Felt like I was participating in something irrational, superstitious. But I signed my name and dated it. The next night at 0303, the same thing happened. Darkness, footsteps, breathing, voice. But the voice sounded slightly calmer, less panicked. The scratches that appeared were shallower. I wrote another entry. and another the night after that. Each time, the voice in the darkness seemed less afraid. The scratches became lighter, less desperate. After a week, Ketteridge called me over during my rounds. "It's working. Whatever you're doing, he knows someone is listening. It's helping him." "Helping him do what?" "He's still trapped." "Yes, but he's not alone anymore. That makes a difference." I continued writing entries every night. Some nights I varied what I wrote, adding details, observations. Other nights I kept it simple. But I always acknowledged that the event happened, that someone suffered, that I witnessed it. Truman started writing entries too, and we convinced other guards to do the same. Within a month, there were multiple logbooks, all of us documenting the nightly event in D27, and the voice changed. It stopped asking for help. Instead, during the 1 minute of darkness, we heard different words. "Thank you. Thank you for remembering. Thank you for writing it down." Then, 3 months after I started, something different happened. At 03:03 on January 15th, 2022, the lights went out as usual. We heard the footsteps, the breathing. But then the generator came back on at 03:03:30, 30 seconds early. The voice had time to say one more thing before fading. "I can rest now. You kept me real. You made sure I mattered. I can finally rest." The lights stabilized. Inside D27, Ketteridge was crying. "He's gone. I can feel it. He's actually gone." We checked the cell. No new scratches appeared that night, or the next night, or the night after that. The generator still shut down at 03:03 for 1 minute, but the cell remained silent during the darkness. The pacing inmate, whoever he was, had finally moved on. But Ketteridge remained. When I asked him if he felt different, if the connection had broken, he shook his head. "I'm still tied to this place, but it's different now. Before, I was pulled back by his need to be remembered. Now I'm here because, I don't know, because I chose to be? Because this is where I belong?" A month later, Ketteridge was scheduled for release. His sentence was complete. I watched him walk out of D-Wing carrying his property bag and wondered if he'd come back again. He did. 6 months later, arrested for a parole violation that seemed almost intentional. When I processed him, he requested D27 specifically. "I know it sounds crazy," he said, "but I feel wrong when I'm not here, like I'm missing something important. This cell, this place, it's part of me now." I assigned him to D27. That night, during my rounds, he told me more. When the pacing inmate was here, I was his anchor, his connection to the living world. Without me being nearby, his 1 minute would have faded to nothing, and without him, I had no purpose. We needed each other. But now he's gone, and I'm still here, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I thought about the logbooks, about the pattern spanning decades. Maybe you're the next one who needs to be witnessed. Maybe that's the new pattern. Over the following months, I documented Ketteridge's presence in D27. Not the supernatural events, those had ended, but his daily existence. How he kept his cell meticulously clean. How he read the same 5 books over and over. How he counted his breaths at night to help himself sleep. Other guards noticed what I was doing and asked why I was wasting time writing about one unremarkable inmate. I couldn't explain it in a way that made sense. I just knew it was important. That bearing witness mattered, that documenting existence was valuable in itself. Then one night, Truman found another old logbook, this one from 2034. 13 years in the future. We stared at it for a long time before opening it. When we did, we saw entries in handwriting that looked similar to mine, but not quite. My son's handwriting, maybe, if I had a son, or my brother's, if my brother ever worked here. The entries were brief. Night rounds, D-Wing, inmate Kettridge, 08291 accounted for. All quiet. Routine maintained. Dated every few days, spanning the entire year of 2034. It's not possible, Truman said. This is from the future. But was it, or had it always existed, just waiting to be found? Time in D-Wing didn't work the way time was supposed to work. The pacing inmate had proven that. Stuck in a 1-minute loop for 70 years, and Kettridge, cycling through the system, always returning to the same cell. Maybe the logbooks existed outside of normal time too. Maybe they were being written now and then and later, all simultaneously. A record that transcended chronological order. I looked at the future entries more carefully. They mentioned my name several times. Officer Rennick continues his documentation. Shift change at 06 Aqua, all quiet. I was still here in 2034, apparently. Still walking these corridors, still writing in logbooks, still bearing witness to something that most people would never believe existed. Are we trapped too? Truman asked. Like the pacing inmate? Like Kettridge? Are we stuck in a loop? Destined to work here forever? Writing logs that have already been written? I didn't have an answer. I looked at the logbook in my hands, at the entries from a future that might not happen or might be inevitable. Then I opened my current logbook and wrote, March 15, 2022. Found logbook dated 2034. Contents unknown. Authenticity questionable. Documenting discovery as required. Generator failed at 0303, restored at 0304, 1-minute outage as expected. Inmate Kettridge, 08291, accounted for. All quiet. As I wrote, I felt something click into place. Like I was completing a circuit, closing a loop that had been open for decades. The date was March 15th. The same date as every significant entry in every logbook I'd found. And I was Officer Rennick, following in my father's footsteps, literally and metaphorically. Maybe we were trapped. Maybe the prison had caught us in its pattern, would keep us here forever, documenting the same events over and over across decades and centuries. Or maybe bearing witness was important enough that it became its own kind of purpose, its own justification. That night at 0303, the generator failed as always. D-Wing went dark. Inside D27, I heard Kettridge breathing. Just breathing. No pacing footsteps. No panicked voice. Just the quiet sound of one man existing in the darkness, waiting for the light to return. At 0304, the generator restarted. The lights came back on. Kettridge was sitting on his bunk, looking at the wall where the scratches had been. They were fading now, the old silver marks tarnishing to gray, slowly disappearing. He's really gone, Kettridge said, and I'm still here. What does that mean? I thought about the future logbook, about my father's entries, about the chain of witnesses stretching back to 1952 and forward to 2034 and beyond. It means someone needs to remember that this happened, I said. Someone needs to write it down. Maybe that's you. Maybe that's me. Maybe we're both part of the same story, the same pattern. Kettridge nodded slowly. Then I'll stay. As long as the cell wants me here, I'll stay. And you'll write it down. You'll make sure it matters. I will. And I have. Every night for the past year, I've written entries in the logbook. Documented the routine, the quiet, the persistence of ordinary existence in an extraordinary place. The entries won't mean anything to anyone else. Just routine observations by a guard in an old prison. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the extraordinary isn't dramatic events and supernatural visitations. Maybe it's the quiet recognition that every moment, every breath, Every mundane detail of existence is worth noting, worth remembering, worth preserving. The generator still fails at 3:03 every night, still restarts at 3:04. 1 minute of darkness that repeats endlessly. But the cell is quiet now. No ghost, no loop, no trapped soul. Just Ketteridge, breathing in the dark, waiting for the light. And me, writing it all down in a logbook that may have already been written, that may be read years from now or never, that exists outside of time in the way that all true records exist, as permanent marks against the tide of forgetting. My shift ends in 3 hours. I'll write one more entry before I leave. Document the quiet, the routine, the persistence. Then I'll go home, sleep for a while, and return tonight to do it all again. Maybe tomorrow I'll find another logbook from the future, or the past, or some impossible in-between. Maybe it will contain entries in my handwriting or someone else's. Maybe it will tell me that I'm trapped here forever, or that I'll leave next week. It doesn't matter. The pattern continues whether I understand it or not. The generator fails at 03:03. Ketteridge breathes in the darkness. The lights return at 03:04 and I write it down. That's enough. That has to be enough. The witnessing itself is the purpose. Everything else is just time passing, cells filling and emptying, the endless cycle of the prison doing what prisons do. But in D27, in the space of 1 minute every night, something else happens. Something that can't be measured or explained or rationalized. A moment that exists outside of normal time, where past and present and future collapse into each other. And I'm here to see it, to record it, to make sure it's remembered. Just like my father before me, just like someone will after I'm gone. The logs will remain, scattered in odd places, waiting to be found by the next guard who doesn't understand yet that they're not finding the logs. The logs are finding them, and the pattern will continue. My name is Graham Lowther, and I've been a corrections officer at Harrow Falls for 13 years. In that time, I've memorized every corridor, every turn, every door in this facility. I could walk it blindfolded if I needed to. That's why I know with absolute certainty that the corridor I saw last night doesn't exist. It started 3 weeks ago during routine patrol. I was walking the northwest quadrant, the oldest section of Harrow Falls, built in 1963. The architecture is different here. Narrower hallways, lower ceilings, that institutional green paint they used back then that's now faded to a color that's neither green nor gray, but somewhere in between. I'd just checked the utility rooms and was heading back to the main corridor when I saw it. An exit sign, glowing red in the darkness of an alcove I'd passed 1,000 times before. The sign was bright, almost too bright, like it had just been installed. But the alcove itself was wrong. I'd never noticed a door there before, never noticed the alcove itself. I approached slowly, my flashlight beam cutting through the shadows. The exit sign flickered once, went dark, then came back on. Below it was a metal door, heavy and industrial, with a small window at eye level. The door looked old, older than the surrounding structure, like it had been here longer than the prison itself. I tried the handle. Locked. I looked through the window but saw only darkness beyond. I marked it on my clipboard. Unidentified door, NW quadrant, near utility room C, and continued my rounds. The next night I looked for the door again. It wasn't there. The alcove existed. I could see the slight recess in the wall, but there was no door. No exit sign, just blank wall. I mentioned it to Maeve Kellington in records. Maeve's worked here 22 years and knows the facility better than anyone. She pulled up the architectural plans and spread them across her desk. "Show me where you saw it," she said. I pointed to the northwest quadrant, the spot where the corridor should be. "Here, between the utility rooms and the guard station." Maeve's finger traced the blueprints. "There's nothing there, no door, no corridor, just wall. Are you sure you saw it?" "I know what I saw." She pulled up older plans from the 1963 construction, then even older ones from 1959, when the prison was first proposed. She went back through renovation plans from 1977, 1985, 1992, 2001, 2014. In none of them was there any indication of a door or corridor in that location. "Maybe it was bricked over," I suggested, "during one of the renovations. If they sealed a corridor, there'd be documentation. Architectural changes require permits, inspections, approvals. There's nothing in the files about sealing anything in that area." But I knew what I'd seen. That night I went back to the northwest quadrant at the exact time I'd been there before. 23:47. I stood in the alcove and waited. Nothing happened. The wall remained blank, solid concrete and paint. Then, at 23:49, I heard something. A click, like a lock disengaging. I looked at the wall and watched, frozen, as lines appeared in the paint. The outline of a door, materializing like it was being drawn by an invisible hand. Then the exit sign flickered into existence above it. That same, too bright red glow. I reached out and touched the door. It was solid, real, cold metal under my palm. The handle turned this time. Unlocked. I pulled the door open and saw what lay beyond. A corridor, maybe 20 feet long, ending in another door. The walls were that same institutional green, but darker, water-stained in places. The floor was concrete, cracked and uneven. A single light bulb hung from the ceiling halfway down, bare and dim, swaying slightly even though there was no air current. I stepped inside. The temperature dropped immediately, maybe 10 degrees. My breath misted in the air. The door swung shut behind me with a heavy clang that echoed wrong, like the corridor was larger than it appeared. I walked slowly toward the far door, my boots echoing on the concrete. As I passed under the light bulb, it flickered. In that moment of darkness, I heard something ahead of me. Footsteps. Someone else walking in the corridor. But when the light steadied, I was alone. The door at the end had no window, just solid metal with a handle. I tried it, locked, but I could see light coming from underneath, a thin strip of yellow-white fluorescence, and I could hear something on the other side. Voices. Not clear enough to make out words, but definitely voices. Multiple people talking at once. I knocked on the door. The voices stopped immediately. Silence. Then a sound I'll never forget. Something heavy being dragged across a floor, scraping and grinding, moving toward the door from the other side. I didn't wait to see what it was. I turned and ran back the way I'd come. When I reached the entrance door, it wouldn't open. I pushed, pulled, threw my weight against it. Nothing. The handle wouldn't turn. I was trapped. Behind me, the scraping sound grew louder. Whatever was dragging itself across the floor was getting closer. I could hear it breathing now, wet and labored. The light bulb flickered again, and in the darkness I saw a shape, low to the ground, moving toward me with jerking, unnatural movements. The light came back on. Nothing there. The corridor was empty, but the scraping continued, closer now, maybe 5 feet away. I hit the door with everything I had. It flew open, dumping me back into the alcove in the northwest quadrant. I spun around, ready to slam the door shut, but there was nothing behind me. Just blank wall. No door. No corridor. No exit sign. My hands were shaking. My radio crackled with static, then cleared. The dispatcher's voice. "Lowther, you missed your checkpoint. Status." I looked at my watch. 0:17. I'd been in the corridor for 28 minutes, but it had felt like 2 or 3 at most. Time had moved differently in there. I didn't report it. How could I? I'd tell them I found a corridor that doesn't exist, that appears and disappears, that's bigger on the inside than it should be. They'd have me transferred to a desk job or worse. But I couldn't let it go. The next night at 23:47, I was back in the alcove. The door appeared again at 23:49. This time, I didn't go inside. I just watched as the exit sign flickered and glowed. After exactly 3 minutes, at 23:52, the door faded away again, vanishing like it had never been there. 3 minutes. A window. That's how long it existed each night. I started documenting it. Every night for a week, I returned to the alcove, timed the appearance, noted the variations. The door always appeared at 23:49, always vanished at 23:52. 3 minutes exactly. And during those 3 minutes, the corridor beyond was accessible. On the 8th night, I brought a camera. When the door appeared, I took photos of the corridor, the walls, the far door. When I reviewed them later, every photo showed only static. The camera had captured nothing but noise. I went to Maeve again and told her everything. She listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. "Show me," she finally said. That night, we stood together in the alcove. 23:47. Nothing. 23:48. Nothing. 23:49. The door appeared. The exit sign flickered to life. Maeve's face went pale. "Mother of God," she whispered. "It's real. I need you to find out what this is. There has to be a record somewhere." She nodded, unable to look away from the door. We watched until 23:52 when it vanished again. The next day, Maeve called me to her office. She'd been there all night, pulling files from the archives, some of them so old they were barely readable. "I found something," she said. "But it doesn't make sense. In 1963, during the original construction, there was a corridor here. It was a service corridor used for moving supplies between the north and west wings. But in 1966, 3 years after the prison opened, it was sealed. Why?" She showed me a memo, yellowed and fragile. Incident report. December 15th, 1966. 3 maintenance workers went into the service corridor to fix a plumbing issue. They never came out. Search teams went in after them. The teams reported. She paused, reading ahead. The corridor's dimensions didn't match the architectural plans. It was longer than it should be. They found personal items belonging to the workers, tools, flashlights, a jacket, but no bodies. The teams reported hearing voices, seeing lights, experiencing severe disorientation. After 12 hours of searching, they sealed the corridor permanently, poured concrete into both entrances, declared it a structural hazard. But it's still there. Not according to the blueprints. Not according to any documentation after 1966. Officially, that corridor was eliminated. Doesn't exist. Then, what am I seeing? Maeve pulled out another file, this one from 1977. There was an incident. An inmate named Daniel Morrison claimed he'd found a door that wasn't on the maps. He told the guards about a corridor that appeared at night, said he could hear people calling for help from inside. They thought he was having a psychotic break, put him in isolation. 3 days later, Morrison was found dead in his cell. No marks, no signs of violence, just dead. She showed me Morrison's cell assignment. Northwest quadrant. The cell closest to where the sealed corridor should be. There have been others, Maeve continued. 1983, a guard named Patterson reported seeing an exit sign in the northwest quadrant. Disappeared before anyone could verify. 1991, an inmate named Reeves. 2004, another guard. Each time, the same story. A door that appears and disappears. A corridor that shouldn't exist. What happened to them, the people who saw it? Patterson transferred out within a month. Reeves died in prison. Unrelated illness, supposedly. The guard from 2004. She checked her notes. Resigned 6 weeks after the incident. Moved to another state, no forwarding address. They ran. Or they were warned. There's a note in Patterson's file, handwritten by the warden at the time. It says, "Matter resolved. Officer advised to forget incident. No further action required." I thought about the corridor, about what I'd heard behind that far door. The voices, the scraping, the thing moving in the darkness. I need to know what's in there, I said. I need to open that far door. Graham, people have disappeared in that corridor. People have died. Let it alone. But I couldn't. Something about it pulled at me, demanded investigation. That night, I prepared carefully. Flashlight with fresh batteries, radio, chalk to mark the walls, and a length of rope tied around my waist, the other end secured to a pipe in the alcove. At 23:49, the door appeared. I entered immediately, giving myself the full 3 minutes. The temperature drop hit me like always. The dim light bulb swayed overhead. I walked quickly to the far door, marking the wall with chalk as I went. At the door, I tried the handle, still locked. But this time I heard the voices clearly. They were on the other side, talking, arguing, pleading. I heard a man's voice, "Check the door again. It has to open eventually. We just need to wait." A woman's voice, "We've been waiting. How long have we been waiting? What if nobody comes?" A third voice, younger, "The light's getting dimmer. I think the battery's dying." They were talking about their flashlight. They thought they were in darkness. But I could see light under the door, bright fluorescent light. I pounded on the door. "Hello? Can you hear me?" The voices stopped, then the woman. "Someone's there. Someone's at the door. Help us. We're trapped." "Stand back," I shouted. "I'm going to try to break it down." I threw my weight against the door. It didn't budge. Tried again. Nothing. The door was too heavy, too solid. "Please," the man's voice. "We've been here so long, the corridor keeps changing. We can't find the exit. Please help us." "How many of you are there?" "3 of us. We're maintenance. We came to fix the pipes. That was..." A pause. Confusion in his voice. "That was yesterday. Or was it longer? Time feels wrong here." The woman again. "What year is it? Can you tell us what year it is?" "It's 2021. Silence. Then the younger voice shaking. "That's not possible. We came in here in 1966. We've only been here for a day, maybe 2. It can't be 2021. The maintenance workers, the 3 who vanished. They were still here, trapped behind the door, experiencing time differently. A day for them had been 55 years in the real world. "I'm going to get help," I told them. "I'm going to find a way to get you out." "No." The man's voice was desperate now. "Don't leave. Every time we hear someone, every time we think we're being rescued, they disappear. Please don't leave us here." I checked my watch. 23:51. 1 minute left before the door vanished. I have to go. The corridor is only here for 3 minutes. If I don't leave now, I'll be trapped too. 3 minutes? The woman's voice was faint now, fading. "We've been knocking on this door for 3 minutes? That's all?" The light bulb flickered. I heard the scraping sound starting again, that thing dragging itself through the darkness. "I'll come back," I shouted. "I promise I'll come back." I ran for the entrance. The rope around my waist went taut. I'd used all 30 feet. I grabbed the rope and pulled myself back, hand over hand, racing against the clock. The scraping thing was right behind me now. I could feel it, hear it breathing. 23:52. I burst through the entrance door and into the alcove. The door slammed shut behind me and vanished, taking the corridor with it. I stood there for several minutes, catching my breath, trying to process what I'd just learned. 3 maintenance workers, trapped for 55 years, experiencing only days. And something else in there with them, something that scraped and breathed and moved in the darkness. I reported it to Maeve. She looked grave. "This changes things," she said. "If they're alive in there, we have a duty to rescue them. But how? The corridor only exists for 3 minutes a night. What if we didn't let it close? What if someone wedged the door open? I'll check the old reports, see if anyone tried that." She found it in an incident report from 1967. After the corridor was sealed, one of the search team members had returned and tried to hold the door open during its nightly appearance. The report said, "Officer Williams attempted to prevent closure of anomalous corridor access by securing door with metal bar. At 23:52, door vanished as expected, passing through metal bar as if bar did not exist. Bar fell to ground, severed cleanly at point where door had been. Recommend no further interference with temporal anomaly." Temporal anomaly. That's what they'd called it. The corridor existed in a different time, a different layer of reality. You could enter it, move through it, but you couldn't force it to stay open. "We need someone with authority," I said. "We need to report this properly." Maeve shook her head. "I've read all the files. Every time this has been reported officially, the report gets buried. Someone high up doesn't want this investigated. Maybe they tried for years and gave up. Maybe they're scared of what might happen if the corridor is fully opened. So we just leave them there? 3 people who've been trapped for decades? I don't know what else we can do." But there had to be something. I spent the next week researching temporal anomalies, parallel dimensions, anything that might explain what was happening. Most of it was science fiction, but there were fringe theories, academic papers from physicists who studied quantum mechanics and relativity. One paper mentioned temporal bubbles, spaces where time moved at different rates relative to the outside world. The paper suggested that such bubbles could theoretically be created by extreme gravitational stress or by certain configurations of matter and energy. The sealed corridor had been directly above the prison's original boiler room. In 1966, there had been an explosion in that boiler room, a catastrophic failure that killed 2 workers and damaged the foundations. The explosion happened on December 14, 1966. The maintenance workers vanished the next day. Maybe the explosion had created a rupture, a tear in the normal flow of time, and the corridor, which existed at the point of greatest structural damage, had fallen through that tear, taking the 3 workers with it. I brought this theory to Maeve. She listened, then said, "If you're right, then rescuing them might not be possible. They exist in a time bubble that's out of sync with our reality. Even if we could get them out, they might not survive the temporal shift. We have to try." She looked at me for a long moment. "There's one person who might know more, an inmate. He's been here longer than anyone, keeps to himself, doesn't cause trouble. But I've seen his file. He was imprisoned in 1967, right after the corridor was sealed. His name is Bishop Trumont, and he was a physicist before his conviction." I found Trumont in the library. He was in his late 70s, white hair, wire-rimmed glasses, reading a physics textbook that was probably older than me. "Mr. Trumont, I need to ask you about something from 1966. He looked up, his eyes sharp despite his age. "The corridor. "You know about it." "Everyone who was here in '67 knew about it. Most of them are dead now, but I remember." He closed his book. "I was brought here just after they sealed it. I heard the guards talking. They were scared. Whatever happened in that corridor had shaken them badly." "Did they say what they saw?" "Not directly, but I listened. I've always been good at listening. They said the corridor was longer inside than outside, that it looped back on itself in ways that shouldn't be possible. That time moved differently there, and they said there was something in the darkness, something that wasn't human, something that had always been there, waiting. Waiting for what? For someone to open the door at the other end. The maintenance workers went into the corridor through one entrance, but they tried to leave through the other door, the one that led deeper into the anomaly. They opened that door and something came through, something that had been waiting in the space between spaces. What happened to it? The search team drove it back. They said it couldn't exist fully in our world. Not yet. It needed more time, more exposure to our reality. So they sealed both ends of the corridor, trapped it inside with the 3 workers. But the corridor still appears. Trumont nodded. Temporal bubbles don't just disappear. They persist, cycling through the same moments over and over. Every night at 2349, the corridor exists for 3 minutes in our timeline. During those 3 minutes, you can enter it, interact with what's inside. But you're experiencing years of time compressed into minutes. The workers have been there for decades by their perception, but from our perspective, they're reliving the same 3 days over and over. Can we save them? No, they're already lost. They've been lost for 55 years. What you hear when you're in there, those aren't the workers as they were. Those are echoes, fragments of consciousness trapped in a time loop. The real workers, their physical bodies, have likely deteriorated over decades of perceived time. What's left is just memory and fear, cycling endlessly. And the thing in the darkness? Trumont's expression darkened. It's been growing stronger, feeding on their fear, their desperation. Every night when the corridor appears, it tests the boundaries, looking for a way through. That's why the door at the far end stays locked. It's not a physical lock, it's a temporal seal. And if that seal breaks, what happens? The thing comes through. And once it's in our world, it can create more corridors, more temporal anomalies. Spread like an infection. That's why the corridor must never be fully opened. That's why those workers can never be rescued. I left Trumont feeling hollowed out. The workers were beyond help, had been beyond help for decades. But I couldn't stop thinking about the voices, the desperate pleas for rescue. That night, I stood in the alcove at 2349. The door appeared. I didn't enter, I just stood there and listened. From inside the corridor, I heard the voices calling out. Different words this time. "Hello? Is someone there? We need help. We're lost." They didn't remember me. Every 3 minutes, their loop reset. They experienced the same fear, the same confusion, the same desperate hope for rescue, over and over for eternity. I wanted to go in, to tell them I was sorry, that there was nothing I could do. But Trumont's warning echoed in my mind. The thing in the darkness was getting stronger. Every interaction, every conversation, every moment of attention fed it. The exit sign flickered. In that moment of darkness, I saw something I'd never seen before. A shape in the alcove with me. Tall, thin, wrong. It moved like it was learning how to exist in 3 dimensions, like it didn't fully understand the geometry of our world. The sign came back on. The shape was gone, but I knew it had been there. The thing from the corridor was bleeding through, manifesting in our reality for split seconds. I reported it to Maeve. She went even paler than usual. It's escalating. The temporal seal is weakening. Every night you've been going to that corridor, every time you've interacted with it, you've been thinning the barrier. What do? We seal it again. Permanently. No more appearances, no more 3-minute windows. We need to collapse the temporal bubble entirely. How? She showed me a document she'd found, written by the physicist who'd first studied the corridor in 1967. It described a theoretical method for collapsing a temporal anomaly. Massive kinetic force applied at the exact moment the anomaly manifested, disrupting the quantum fluctuations that allowed it to exist. In simple terms, blow up the wall at 2349. Are you serious? It's the only way. If we don't, that thing will eventually break through. And according to the physicist's notes, once it enters our timeline fully, it will be impossible to stop. We spent 2 days planning. We couldn't use official channels. Any request for explosives would require explanation and approval we'd never get. Instead, Maeve had a contact in demolition, someone who owed her a favor. We acquired enough explosive to destroy the wall without bringing down the building. The plan was simple. Place the charges at 2345, detonate at 2349 exactly, collapse the temporal anomaly before it could fully manifest. But I needed to warn them, the workers. Even if they were just echoes, even if they couldn't be saved, they deserved to know someone had tried. On the night before the demolition, I went to the corridor one last time. 2349. The door appeared. I entered and walked to the far door. "Hello," I called out. "Can you hear me?" The voices responded immediately. "Yes. Yes, we hear you. Please help us." "I can't help you. I'm sorry. But I need you to know someone remembers. Someone knows you're here." "What?" "No. Please, you have to get us out. Your names are being recorded. The world will know what happened to you. You won't be forgotten." The woman's voice breaking. "We don't want to be remembered. We want to go home." "I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The scraping sound started, that thing moving in the darkness. But I stayed by the door, listening to the workers plead, until my time ran out and I had to leave. The next night, Maeve and I set the charges. At 2345, everything was ready. We retreated to a safe distance, the detonator in Maeve's hand. 2347. The alcove remained empty. Normal wall, no door. 2348. Still nothing. 2349. The door began to appear, the exit sign flickering to life, and in that moment Maeve pressed the detonator. The explosion was massive, even though we'd calculated it to be contained. The wall blew inward, chunks of concrete and rebar flying into the space where the corridor had been forming. For a split second, I saw it. The corridor fully manifested, and the 3 workers standing at the far door, their faces turned toward the blast, expressions of surprise frozen in time. Then the wall collapsed completely. Tons of debris falling, crushing, obliterating. The exit sign sparked and died. The corridor vanished. Not gradually, but all at once. Snapped out of existence like a light being switched off. When the dust settled, there was no door, no alcove. Just a pile of rubble filling the space where the temporal anomaly had been. We waited. Security came running, alarms blaring, chaos erupting. Maeve and I gave our statements. Faulty wall, structural failure, lucky we weren't hurt. The investigation concluded it was a combination of age and water damage that caused the collapse. No charges filed, just a section of the prison condemned and rebuilt. 3 weeks later, the new wall was finished. Clean, modern, with no alcove, no door, no exit sign. The corridor was gone, but I still check sometimes. Late at night, around 23:49, I walk through the northwest quadrant, just to make sure. Just to confirm it's not coming back. Last week, I saw something that chilled me. The new wall, at exactly 23:49, began to show cracks, hairline fractures, spreading across the paint like veins. They lasted maybe 30 seconds, then faded away. I reported it to Maeve. She went to check the wall herself. Found no cracks, no structural damage. Probably just settling, she said. But her eyes said something else, worry, fear. Because we both know you can't destroy a temporal anomaly with explosives. You can only disrupt it, push it back, make it dormant. But it's still there, waiting, cycling through its loop in a dimension we can't perceive. And if the cracks are appearing, that means it's finding its way back. I've started documenting everything, writing it all down, just like I'm doing now. Creating a record so that when the corridor eventually returns, and I believe it will, someone will understand what they're dealing with. Yesterday, I visited Trumont again. Told him about the collapse, about the cracks. He wasn't surprised. Temporal anomalies are persistent, he said. They exist in multiple timelines simultaneously. You may have collapsed it in this timeline, but it still exists in others. And sometimes timelines bleed together. What do we do when it comes back? Same thing you did before. Seal it, document it. Warn whoever comes after you. The corridor has been here since 1966, and it will be here long after we're gone. All we can do is hold the line, keep it from spreading. He's right, this isn't over. The corridor is like a wound in reality, and wounds don't heal cleanly. They scar, they ache, they break open when stressed. 3 nights ago, at 23:49, I saw the exit sign again. Faint, barely visible, projected on the new wall like a ghost image. It lasted only a few seconds before fading. Last night it lasted 15 seconds. Tonight I'll be there again at 23:49. Watching. Waiting. Ready to document whatever appears. Because that's my job now. Not corrections officer, not security guard. Witness. Observer of the anomaly. Keeper of the record. The corridor is coming back. I can feel it. And when it does, someone will need to know what happened, how to fight it, how to keep it contained. Maybe that someone will be me, still standing guard in the northwest quadrant, still watching for the exit sign. Or maybe it will be whoever finds these notes after I'm gone. Either way, the record will continue. The warning will be passed on, and the corridor will wait, patient and eternal, in the spaces between seconds, ready to appear again when the moment is right. The workers are still there. I hear them sometimes in my dreams. Still calling for help, still trapped, still hoping for rescue that will never come. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. But some doors must stay closed. Some corridors must remain unwalked, even if it means abandoning those who are already lost. The coffee in my thermos had gone cold 3 hours ago, but I kept drinking it anyway. Something to do with my hands during the long stretches of nothing that made up the graveyard shift at Coldbrook State Penitentiary. My name is Declan Havers, and I've been working nights here for 6 years. Long enough to know that the silence between 2 and 4 in the morning has its own particular quality. It's not peaceful. It's the kind of quiet that makes you aware of every sound your own body makes, every creak of the building settling, every distant clang of metal on metal. Tonight felt different, though. Had felt different since I clocked in at 11. Nothing I could put my finger on exactly, just a tension in the air like the moment before a thunderstorm. The fluorescent lights in Block D seemed dimmer than usual, flickering at the edges of my vision. Or maybe I was just tired. 6 years of rotating shifts will do that to you. Mess with your perception, make you see things that aren't there. I was walking my second round of the night when I noticed Lyle Morrow was awake. Most of the inmates slept during these hours, or at least pretended to. But Morrow was sitting on the edge of his bunk, perfectly still, staring at his cell door. Not at me through the window, just at the door itself like he was waiting for something. Morrow had been here for 8 months. Aggravated assault, drug possession, resisting arrest. The usual cascade of bad decisions that landed men in places like this. He was 32, rail thin, with the kind of pale skin that suggested he didn't spend much time in the yard. Kept to himself mostly. Never caused problems. The kind of inmate you barely noticed because he blended into the background. "Can't sleep, Morrow?" I asked, stopping at his cell. He didn't look at me. His eyes stayed fixed on that door. "You should go home, boss," he said quietly. His voice had this flat quality to it like he was reading from a script. "Clock out early. Tell them you're sick." "You know I can't do that." "Then stay in the break room. Don't do your rounds at 3. The specific time made something cold slide down my spine. Why 3? But Morrow didn't answer. He just kept staring at that door, and I noticed his hands were gripping the edge of his bunk so tight his knuckles had gone white. I moved on, made a note in my log about Morrow's odd behavior, and tried to shake off the unease settling in my gut. Inmates said weird things sometimes, especially the ones who'd been using before they got locked up. Brain chemistry took time to balance out. At 2:30, I checked in with Captain Ronan Pell. Pell was the night watch commander, a thick-necked man in his 50s who ran things by the book. He was in the control room, monitoring the screens that showed grainy black and white feeds from the handful of cameras we had. Most of the prison wasn't covered. Budget cuts meant we relied more on regular patrols than surveillance. "Quiet night," Pell said without looking up from his crossword puzzle. He did the same puzzle book every night, working through it in pen. "Too quiet," I said, and immediately regretted it. Sounded like something from a bad movie, but Pell just grunted. "Quiet's good, means nobody's planning anything stupid. Morrow in D7 is acting strange. Told me not to do my rounds at 3. That got Pell's attention. He looked up, his weathered face creasing with concern. "What else did he say?" "That I should go home, or stay in the break room." Pell was quiet for a moment, his pen tapping against the desk. "Morrow have any gang connections? Anyone he might be running with?" "Not that I know of. He's a loner. Keep an eye on him. Could be someone's planning something, using him to send a message. I'll check with day shift, see if they noticed anything." I nodded and headed back out, but Pell's words didn't make me feel better. A message for what? And why would Morrow warn me if something was going down? The minutes crawled toward 3. I found myself checking my watch more often than usual, watching the second hand make its slow circuit. At 2:50, I was in Block C, the oldest part of the prison. The heating was always inconsistent here, and tonight the corridor felt colder than it should. Cold enough that I could see my breath misting in the air. I radioed Pell. "You getting temperature readings from C Block?" Static crackled for a moment before his voice came through. "Says 72 degrees. Why?" "Feels like 50 in here. Probably the sensor's acting up again. I'll put in a maintenance request." But I knew what 72 degrees felt like, and this wasn't it. This was the kind of cold that sank into your bones, that made the metal of my flashlight painful to hold. I could hear my footsteps echoing too loud in the corridor, bouncing off the concrete walls in a way that made it sound like someone was walking behind me. I kept turning to look, but there was never anyone there. At 2:58, I was back near the central hub, the junction where all 4 cell blocks connected. The clock on the wall showed the seconds ticking away. 59 seconds, 58, 57. My radio crackled. Pell's voice, but distorted, like he was underwater. "Havers, where? Position." "Say again, Captain, you're breaking up." More static, then words that made my blood freeze. "All personnel accounted for inside." I looked around the empty hub. "Captain, I'm in the central hub. I'm not inside anywhere. I'm on rounds." The clock hit 2:59, and the alarm went off. Not the usual alarm for a fight or a medical emergency. This was the evacuation alarm, the one that only went off during planned drills or in case of fire or chemical leak. Its shrill wail filled every corridor, bouncing off the walls until it felt like the sound was coming from inside my own head. Red emergency lights started flashing, casting everything in a pulsing crimson glow. I grabbed my radio. "Captain, what's happening? Why are we evacuating?" Nothing but static. "Captain Pell, respond." Still nothing. The emergency lights were doing something strange. Under each cell door, in the gap between the door and the floor, the red light was pooling like liquid. Actually pooling, collecting in thick puddles that seemed to glow with their own luminescence. I crouched down to look at one, and I swear I could see movement in it, like there was something swimming in that red light. I stood up fast and started moving toward the control room. The alarm was still blaring, the lights still flashing, and now I could hear something else underneath it all. A sound like water rushing through pipes. But we didn't have pipes that size. It was coming from everywhere and nowhere, a deep gurgling that I felt in my chest more than heard with my ears. The control room was locked when I got there. I pounded on the door. "Captain Pell, open up!" Through the small window, I could see him sitting at his desk, his back to me. He wasn't moving. "Pell!" I hammered harder. "We need to evacuate. Open the door." He still didn't move. Just sat there, perfectly still, while his radio on the desk crackled with that same distorted message over and over. "All personnel accounted for inside. All personnel accounted for inside." But I was out here. I was in the corridor. How could all personnel be accounted for if I was out here? I used my master key to unlock the door and pushed it open. The alarm was muffled in here, reduced to a distant wail. Pell sat at his desk, his crossword puzzle in front of him, pen still in his hand. But he wasn't breathing, wasn't blinking. His eyes were open, staring at nothing, and his skin had taken on a grayish tint. "Captain?" I reached out to shake his shoulder, and the moment I touched him, he moved. Not like a person moves, but like something was puppeting him. His head turned to face me with a series of small, jerking motions, his neck cracking with each adjustment. His eyes were wrong. They were Pell's eyes, the same light blue I'd seen 1,000 times, but there was nothing behind them. They had the blank quality of a doll's eyes. His mouth opened, and that distorted voice came out, the same one from the radio. "All personnel accounted for inside." I jerked my hand back and stumbled toward the door. Pell's head tracked me with those same jerky movements, his body still facing forward. "Where are you going, Havers? The alarm has sounded. Everyone should be inside." "Inside what?" But he didn't answer. Just kept staring at me with those dead eyes while his hand continued to fill in his crossword puzzle, the pen moving in precise, mechanical strokes. I backed out of the control room and ran. The alarm was still going, the red light still pulsing, and that liquid light under the cell doors was spreading now, creeping out into the corridors in thin streams that moved against gravity, flowing up the walls in defiance of physics. I needed to get to the exit, get out of the building, call for help from outside. But as I ran through the corridors, I realized something was wrong with the layout. I knew this prison like the back of my hand after 6 years, could navigate it in the dark. But the corridors weren't where they should be. I took a left that should have led to Block B, and instead found myself back at the central hub. Tried a different route, and ended up at the same place. It was like the prison was rearranging itself, folding in on itself, and no matter which direction I went, I couldn't find the exit. I passed by Morrow's cell, and he was standing at his door now, both hands pressed against the small window. His face was illuminated by that red, pulsing light, giving him a hellish appearance. "I told you," he said as I ran past. "I told you to stay inside. Now you're out here with it." "With what?" I shouted back, not stopping. "The thing that comes when the alarm sounds. The thing that's been waiting." I kept running, my boots splashing through that red liquid light that was everywhere now, coating the floors, the walls, dripping from the ceiling. It didn't feel wet. It felt like nothing, like running through colored air, but it left traces on my skin that glowed faintly. I found a stairwell and took it up, thinking maybe I could get to the administrative offices, find a phone that worked. But when I emerged on what should have been the second floor, I was in a corridor I'd never seen before. The cells here were different, older, with bars instead of solid doors, and they were all empty. Not empty like they'd been evacuated, empty like they'd never been used. Dust coated everything, thick enough that my footsteps left clear prints, but there were other footprints too, leading down the corridor. Bare feet. Too many of them, overlapping and confused, like a crowd had walked this way recently. I followed them because I didn't know what else to do. The alarm was quieter here, or maybe I was just getting used to it. The red light pulsed slower, almost like a heartbeat. The footprints led to a door at the end of the corridor. It was made of heavy wood, iron-bound, the kind of door that belonged in a castle, not a modern prison. There was no lock on it, no handle, just a small slot at eye level, the kind they used to pass food through in old prisons. I looked through it. On the other side was a room full of people. Guards, inmates, all standing perfectly still, arranged in rows like they were posing for a photograph. Their eyes were open but unseeing, that same dead quality I'd seen in Pell. And standing among them, moving between the rows, was something that hurt to look at directly. It wore the shape of a person the way I might wear a coat, like it was something it had picked up and put on. When it moved, the shape flickered, and underneath I caught glimpses of something else. Something with too many joints, that existed in too many dimensions for my brain to properly process. It stopped moving and turned to face the door, turned to face me. It didn't have a face, not really, but I felt it looking at me with an attention that was crushing in its intensity. The slot slammed shut on its own. I heard footsteps on the other side of the door, coming closer. The sound of something that didn't quite know how to walk, that was still figuring out how joints and muscles worked. I ran, back down the corridor, my prints overlapping with those bare footprints. Back down the stairs, taking them 3 at a time. The alarm was louder again, and through it I could hear that thing behind me, learning how to run, getting faster with each step. I burst back into the main corridor system and saw Morrow still at his cell door. "In here!" he shouted. "Get in here!" I didn't question it. I used my key to open his cell and threw myself inside. Morrow slammed it shut behind me, and we both pressed our backs against the far wall. Through the small window, I could see it pass by. The thing wearing a person shape. It moved smoothly now, like it had figured out the trick of walking. Its footsteps made no sound on the concrete floor, but I could feel each one like a vibration in my bones. It stopped outside Morrow's cell. We both held our breath. It stood there for a long moment, and then it spoke in a voice that was trying very hard to sound human but couldn't quite manage it. "Officer Havers, the alarm has sounded. All personnel should be inside. Please come out." I didn't move, didn't breathe. "The evacuation is complete. Everyone is accounted for. Everyone is safe inside. You should join them." Morrow's hand found mine in the darkness, gripped it tight. His palm was slick with sweat. The thing outside made a sound that might have been a sigh or might have been something else. "You cannot hide in the cells. The cells are inside. Inside is where it finds you." Then it moved on, and I heard its footsteps fading down the corridor. We stayed frozen for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Finally, Morrow let out a shaking breath. "It's gone for now, but it'll come back. It always comes back." What the hell was that? I don't know what it is. I just know it's been here longer than the prison has. My cellmate told me about it before they transferred him out. Said he'd seen it during a drill 3 years ago. Said the alarm went off at the wrong time, and something came through. Most of the guards don't remember. They were inside when it happened. Got taken into that room, wherever that room is. When they came out, they didn't remember anything, just lost time. "Why didn't you warn anyone? Tell the warden?" Morrow laughed, a brittle sound. "Tell them what? That there's a monster that comes when the alarm goes off at the wrong time? They'd have thrown me in psych. Besides, who'd believe me? I'm just an inmate." The alarm finally stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the noise had been. The red lights faded, replaced by the normal harsh fluorescence. But they seemed dimmer than before, like something had drained the power from them. "What do we do now?" I asked. "We wait for morning, wait for day shift to come in, act like nothing happened. That's what everyone else does." "And Pell?" Morrow's grip on my hand tightened. Pell was inside. "He's part of it now. He'll come to work tomorrow like nothing happened, do his crossword, run his shift. But it won't really be him, not all of him anyway. Part of him will always be in that room." I thought about Pell's dead eyes, his jerky movements, that mechanical voice. How many others? More than you'd think. You can tell if you know what to look for. They blink wrong. Move wrong. Sometimes you catch them just staring at nothing, like they're listening to something you can't hear. We sat in the darkness of Morrow's cell, listening to the prison slowly come back to life. Somewhere, someone coughed. Someone else rolled over on their bunk. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. But underneath them, I could hear something else. That rushing water sound, distant now, but still there, like it was flowing through spaces that shouldn't exist. Morning came eventually, the way it always does. Day shift arrived, and I gave my report to the incoming supervisor. "Routine night," I told him. "Nothing unusual." The supervisor nodded, barely listening, already thinking about his own day ahead. Pell was there too, getting ready to clock out. He looked normal now, color back in his skin, eyes clear and focused. He clapped me on the shoulder as I was leaving. "Good shift, Havers. See you tonight." His hand on my shoulder felt normal, warm, real. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw it, just for a second. That blankness, that absence, like looking through a window into an empty room. "See you tonight, Captain," I said, and walked out into the morning light. I should have quit, should have never come back. But where would I go? What would I do? This was my job, my livelihood, And more than that, I needed to know, needed to understand what I'd seen. So that night, I came back, clocked in at 11, got my assignment from Pell, who acted completely normal, working on his crossword puzzle like he did every night. And I waited for 2:59, but the alarm didn't go off. Not that night, not the next night, not for weeks. I started to wonder if I'd imagined it. Stress-induced hallucination. 6 years of night shifts catching up with me. But then I'd see the way some of the other guards moved, and I'd know it was real. I'd catch them staring at nothing, blinking in that wrong rhythm. I'd hear them repeat the same phrases, the same responses, like they were reading from a script. And Morrow would watch me from his cell during my rounds, and I'd see the knowing in his eyes, the recognition of someone else who'd seen it and survived. 3 months later, I was training a new guard. Young kid named Robertson, fresh out of the academy. Eager, nervous, asking a million questions. I was showing him the ropes, teaching him the patrol routes, when he asked, "What happens if there's an alarm during the night shift?" "We follow the evacuation procedures," I said automatically. "But what if it goes off at the wrong time, like not during a drill?" I stopped walking and looked at him. "What do you mean, the wrong time?" Robertson shrugged. "I don't know. Just seems like that would be bad. Everyone being evacuated in the middle of the night." I should have told him then. Should have warned him, but what could I say? Instead, I just said, "If you hear the alarm go off at 2:59, stay in the control room. Don't go into the corridors." He laughed, thinking I was joking. "Why 2:59? Just trust me on this one." 2 weeks later, Robertson called in sick and never came back. Requested a transfer to a facility across the state. When I asked him why, he wouldn't meet my eyes. Just said it wasn't a good fit. I've been working at Coldbrook for 8 years now. The alarm has gone off at 2:59 3 more times since that first night. Each time, I've locked myself in a cell with Morrow, and we've waited it out. Each time, it takes someone. Sometimes a guard, sometimes an inmate. They always come back, but they come back wrong. They come back with that blankness, that mechanical quality. I've started keeping a list. Names of everyone I suspect has been taken into that room. It's longer than it should be, longer than I want to think about. And sometimes, late at night when the prison is quiet, I can hear that rushing water sound in the walls. I can see that red light seeping under doors that should be locked. I can feel it waiting. The thing is, I think it's always been here. Before the prison, before the building. This place was built on something, over something, and whatever that something is, it's patient. It takes its time. One person at a time, adding them to its collection in that impossible room. Morrow says his sentence is up in 3 months. Says he's going to run as far from this place as he can. But I've seen the way he looks sometimes, that faraway stare, that wrong rhythm to his breathing. I think it's already got a piece of him. I think it's got a piece of all of us who've seen it. I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. Keep coming back night after night, waiting to see if this will be the night the alarm goes off at 2:59. But I can't seem to leave either. It's like something's holding me here, keeping me coming back. Maybe that's part of it too. Maybe once you've seen it, once you've heard that alarm at the wrong hour, you're marked. You're on its list. Last night, I caught myself standing in the central hub at 2:58. Just standing there, waiting. I don't remember walking there. Don't remember making the decision to stop. I just found myself there, watching the clock, counting down the seconds. The alarm didn't go off, but I stayed there for 10 minutes, waiting, hoping, dreading. And when I finally walked away, I could feel something disappointed. Not my own disappointment, something else's. I'm starting to understand why the others don't fight it, why they just let it take them into that room. There's a certain peace in surrender, in becoming part of something larger than yourself. No more fear, no more waiting. Just that blank stare, that mechanical existence. But I'm not ready for that yet. Not yet. So I keep coming back. Keep walking my rounds. Keep checking my watch as it approaches 3 in the morning. Keep listening for that alarm that sounds at the wrong hour, calling us all inside to a place where time doesn't work right, and something ancient waits with infinite patience. Morrow asked me last week if I ever think about what happens to the ones who go into that room, what they see, what they become. I told him I try not to. But that was a lie. I think about it all the time, every night.